And we've got the real Rick Adams to supply the "Thank you, you're so kind" voiceover.
That's right.
Okay, Tom, kick her off.
Okie dokie.
Thank you. You're too
Running
kind.
intro.
This is CoCoTALK, the world's leading live talk show featuring the Tandy Color computer. Streaming live on YouTube and Roku, available as a podcast and enjoyed the world over. And now, here's your host.
Yep.
All right.
We're already halfway through the intro.
We're on.
Living watching already.
We're on, right?
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to CoCoTALK, or as we call it sometimes, Hollywood Squares. Hello, stars. Are you out there?
Some people just call it dumpster fire, but okay, that sounds better.
So I am trying to see the panel, but welcome everybody. And do not adjust your television set. There is nothing wrong, or there is something very wrong. Stevie Stroh is not here today, and we are going to entertain you, or try to, and we're looking forward to it today. So what I am struggling with is actually seeing the actual panel on YouTube.
I'm a big fan of the gallery view.
Yeah, I might have to do that, but I like to see what the audience is.
They're not in the same order they are on the stream, so.
That's true. So.
And we've got a bunch of people in chat, too, I might mention.
Okay, so I'm going to go to a different way to do this here.
Okay, while you're switching that, I'll just say hi to everyone in the chat room. There's, Mark, myself, Mark Bosley, Al Hartman's in there, Mark Overhose is in there, Disney Saints fan is in there, James Jones is in there, Eric Canales is in there, Ken Can Make It's in there. So hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hi. G'day.
Good to see you back, Steve.
We'll see how long I can make it today.
Okay, great. I actually have access now. So going around the horn, let's get some updates from everybody, see what's been going on the last week. In the top left, our returning champion, L. Curtis Boyle. Welcome to the show, L.
Yeah, it's cool. I've never been on before. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I haven't done too much with the CoCo. I did get a couple minor things started. I did my first webpage update of my CoCo Games page in probably about a year. I added, I think, 4 or 5 new games. Well, not new games, but new to the page. And I've actually finally started, after months of procrastination, starting to go through my 700 floppy disks, trying to see if there's any programs I have on there that are not on the archive and not posted anywhere else. And I have found a few so far. But I'm going to continue going through the disk study because I have some disks that are starting to die. I had a big scare when one of the labels came off while the drive was spinning and actually stuck onto the heads. I got, oh great, I just wrecked my only 5 1/4 inch drive, but actually it came off clean and it's working again. So, whew. But yeah, expect to see some software that hasn't been uploaded to the archive and stuff before to be coming up sometime in the next few months after I get everything archived.
And Curtis, do you want people, if we notice games that are not on the archive, or we'd like to see them, I'm sorry, not on the archive, on your website, and we'd like to see them on the website, should we let you know?
No, I know there's about 600-700 missing.
That's okay.
I've got screenshots and stuff. The hard part is doing the research for the actual text of the game, like, you know, who made it, what year it came out, because sometimes the copyright year is not the same year it came out. Like you'll notice some stuff, especially with Radio Shack, they might have, you know, had a game submitted to them that was written in 1982 and they don't release it till 1984. Which if you don't go to the catalogs and stuff, you won't know. So there's a bit of research that needs to be done for the factual side of things, and that's what usually takes the longest. And I've just been busy, you know, working on ease of use and everything else too. So like John, upcoming John Strong will say, you know, there's just too many projects at once.
That's right. So going clockwise here, Mark B, how are you doing?
Hi, pretty good. I just finished replacing all the caps on my second CoCo 3, and actually found several that were leaking this time. So it was a good time to change them.
Glad you
Oh,
caught
wow.
them early.
Yeah, just a little bit of leakage, cleaned up real quick. So the last one I didn't find anything even wrong even when I tested the caps, but this time a little different. So haven't powered it on yet, so haven't tested for smoke.
The magic smoke. Great. Well, glad you're on the show. And Mark, how are you doing? I see you brought your friend Apple.
Yes, I did. I am wearing a Radio Shack T-shirt here. Oh yeah, long-time listener, first-time caller. Anyway, yeah, glad to be here. No projects to mention this week. Oh, other than the magazine, all those people that are supposed to submit to the new Rainbow, please get your submissions in.
Have you got a place for them to go to send it to yet, or?
Just email so far. Well, actually, I did set up a Facebook page that's private for the moment. Yeah, group, and so you can upload files to there if you want. So,
what's the name of the group?
I can't tell you. No, it's called the new. Do you want me to post
It's
the
kind of
link?
hard to find upload if you're not going to tell us the name of it.
Well, those who need to know can know. They've been invited. I'll post the link.
Oh, so it's private invite. Okay.
Yeah. It's a it's production thing. We don't want to give away all the secrets before the big reveal.
Okay, so if somebody wants to submit an article that has not told you so far, they have to notify you first, either publicly through Facebook or Discord or email, and then you'll add them to the group. Gotcha.
Yeah.
I'll
No
post
promises. You might want to let me know.
Sure, no problem.
Okay. Get your Rainbow Magazine ideas to Mark D. Overholzer. Boy, that's going to be rough. Mark, you have to teach me about that name. Ron Delvaux, Timberman. How are you?
Pretty good. How's everybody doing? Don't answer. That's cool.
It's your spotlight right now.
This is Ron of Ron's Garage, and
here you go, Ron. If anyone doesn't answer, we have got some crickets.
That's good. I have some work to do on the new Rainbow we're working on, and at least the magazine, whatever we're going to call it. And we'll be doing that toward the end of the month. And in between, I'm constantly posting stuff. If you've ever been to Ron's Garage on Facebook, you can look at all the pictures I love to put on my CoCo 3 and post them. Some are cartoons, some are just pictures of whatever. And I sometimes put a link on there so that you can download stuff and see it on your computer. That's about it. I did make some software, so I'm now a software writer now instead of a user. And we'll be covering that later in the show.
Yeah, we will.
Excellent. John Strong, how are you doing? What have you been up to?
Oh, just playing with some joysticks. I got the analog controller came in this week, and so I've made some versions of a case for it and doing some things there. Probably want to cover that a little bit in detail a little bit later, but that's what I've been working on this week as far as CoCo.
Do you still offer the 7-hour warranty?
You don't have to answer that.
Well, it's
crickets.
I try to get good quality products in it, items, and it's going to last. The other case, just out of curiosity, one of these I went and stood on, to see whether it'd break or not, and it didn't affect it. So they're built pretty strong.
How much for that one?
With the stick and finish, I'm hoping to be able to hit a $30 price tag at it.
That's decent.
Is it extra for one you've stood on?
That's kind of your version of the autograph.
Well, by request, maybe.
And they're 3D printed, those cases, aren't they?
Yes, they are. In fact, he probably is. Probably need to mute my mic once I get off here because it is printing version 3 of the analog case right now. So
right.
I don't know if you guys are picking it up today or not. Sometimes it picks up better.
We don't hear it.
I see some nose shaking, so we're okay.
No.
Seems okay.
All right. So been doing that. Have some questions for the team about some things to maybe make the best design decision for the most people. And I guess I can hit that real quick. I guess is whether on the smaller one, whether we want to do the buttons left or right, or we want to do just a single buttons on the top and hold it something like this, or whether you'd prefer to hold it like this. So it's kind of, I think they're all good choices.
What's the most common layout?
Well, Kraft and did the buttons in the front. I really didn't care for them too much because it was kind of awkward to hold. And of course, the Kraft buttons were kind of small. I think these are a little bit more comfortable this way to hold and to control, personally. Yeah. So one on top, one in the front. You've got the Kraft joystick there. So it's just a matter of what I think the most people would be with. The advantage to here is I'll put a switch on it and be able to switch it left or right with it wired for facing frontwards. Then you can use either left or right as your preference without having to switch it.
Of course, anything that's being developed new, we can always have the software change the orientation. But one suggestion, keep the 2 buttons.
Yeah, I got the 2 buttons. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you're thinking about single. No, keep the 2.
No, I wasn't thinking about a single button. I was just whether to make these so they're left or right facing. Okay. So if someone prefers to use a right hand or left hand, that direction they can do so.
Yeah.
And whether we just want a single orientation for it, the 2 buttons. That's kind of more the traditional. I don't know which people would be happier with.
Yeah.
Is the joystick self-centering?
This one is not. Okay.
Right.
And there is another version similar to this out there that I haven't ordered yet. It's supposed to be. I don't know how well it does. Okay.
Well, most of the people they out there talking about the retro games and like that, they really hate the Atari 5200 because its joysticks weren't self-centering.
Yeah, I mean, but the best option is if you can is to do something like Crafted and have it so you can do both. There are some games, especially on the CoCo, since we had just free floating sticks for the first few years, that definitely were designed to play that way. So
and I understand that, because a lot of games will play simply with the arcade style stick. Okay. And so I plan to make those available. And this is a very nice joystick, except it's not available in a value range, whereas it easily connects to the CoCo. You're missing some range on it. And so kind of options there. I actually like some that don't sound center. And then for the ones that are just directional, I like the switch joysticks. But that's personal preference.
Another idea for you is, since you're making these type of controller cases, how about one with a paddle?
I need to finish this, but that's why I'm working on joysticks and stuff right now. And so, yes, I do plan to do a paddle. And actually to make a little adapter so you can hook 2 paddles to 1 joystick controller.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
So that you would be able to do 4 paddles if you want to do.
And I can finally write my Etch Sketch program with the right knobs to.
Okay. And so for Steve's benefit, since you were not here last week, is actually planning to make a little adapter that you can plug 2 joysticks in and then be able to switch between the 2. So one thing that annoyed me, and people kind of brought it up last week, and I thought, or a week or so ago, and I thought, yeah, that's a great idea, but let me just take it so you can use it with any. And, I'd use a mouse for the CoCo, and then I want to switch the game, and the mouse wasn't the right thing to play with. So you unplug it, use the same port. And if I could have 2 of them plugged in at the same time and switch between them, great. So I've got to sit down and do the PC board, not too complicated, but it's been a while since I done custom pads in KiCat, so I have to go look at it. But a very simple little project, but I think it'll be very useful for people.
Yeah,
Keep
and if
two
you could do something
joysticks.
that can switch between left and right joysticks, because every game picked a different standard as to what the default joystick was. So if you could do both of those, where you can switch between, two physical joysticks, and then also switch whether it's accessing the left or right port. I don't know
That
if
would be a little bit more complicated, but I'll think about it.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll mention why there's an upcoming story. Henry Reitfeld's been putting in his CoCo and CoCo Flash into a Rampage arcade cabinet with the arcade sticks and arcade buttons. And of course, the joystick is plugged into one port, so it only works in the games that default to that port or let you select it easily without actually using the keyboard.
Yeah.
Like hit the button on the side you want to play on type thing, but not all games did that. So.
Yeah, let me think about how that has to be wired up, okay, to do that.
Hey, Rick Adams, it'd be cool if you could bundle your game with his joysticks and have the logo for your game on there and have a combination thing special.
But so that's some of the things going on.
I just wanted to add one more thing while we're still on the subject. Most of the games I wrote, if you press the fire button, it assumes that's the joystick you want to use.
Yeah, I wish more authors had done that, but they didn't.
Yeah.
I seem to remember, and maybe you've already said this, that I have a joystick somewhere where it's both free-floating and self-centering. There are two switches on the bottom of the joystick.
The craft,
the crap joystick and the Radio Shack clone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have one right here.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, the trackball, I have one of the Wicco trackballs. Those are also nice on the CoCo.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons I looked at this one. This is actually a controller stick from a RC controllers. And because it did have springs for self-centering, and I was hoping you could release it. You can disable that, but it's quite a problem disabling it, re-enabling. It's very complicated in there for a joystick, okay? And if we look at what we've got here, it's very simple, okay? Looks very good, solid. Just trying to do what I can with what's out there, It'd be nice if,
making it affordable.
Was rich, can afford to have a custom set one made, but making do with what we can find.
John, not being a huge company that specializes in joysticks, I think you're doing a great job with what you've got going there. It's very professional looking.
Well, they're 3D printed, you can tell that, but they look pretty nice. I try to keep the quality up as best as I can.
Yeah, well, I'm comparing that to, like I said in a previous CoCoTALK, that Bob Rosen in the beginning made joysticks, and he just used that blue project case from Radio Shack and the button off of the parts wall in Radio Shack. So what you're doing is like light years ahead compared to that.
Well, and I've had some experience doing this a little bit because back in the day, we converted a lot of IBM compatible joysticks to work on the Tandays.
Well, yeah, that was something I said, I think, last week or in the chat, the After Dark, that it would be great to adapt IBM joysticks only because you can't really buy new CoCo joysticks, but you can still get IBM joysticks out there.
Can you put a sound chip in there?
Well, let's see. Well, I can actually stick a voice synthesizer in there, but then again, if you want it to work, that's another story.
Yeah.
I can stick a tortilla chip in there.
Yes.
Free lunch included.
So, hey, moving back around the panel, I skipped by Tom C because Tom C and Mark B have been trying to confuse me today. They're wearing the same color shirt and appear to be distant relatives. So back to Tom C. How are you doing?
I am doing fine, thank you. I'm just trying to figure out why I cannot get the chat to work on the left-hand side, but...
Tom is our engineer today, so thank you, Tom.
So you have to forgive me for my novice, mistakes over here.
Well, as we've been saying all morning, the show has never been professional, so why start now? So thanks, Tom, and thanks, Mark. And guys, wear a different shirt color next time. Do a little coordination.
Fair enough.
Okay. Moving on, a man who cannot take his game on a plane because he named it bomb threat, Mr. Rick Adams. How are you doing?
Thank you. You're too kind. I'm busy. I'm busy right now, not finishing my game OmniStar, and not finishing my game Temple of Rom 2, and getting ready for CoCo Fest. Let me turn my camera around. Okay, here I am in my evil lair, and so here's the kiosk I'm going to be using at CoCo Fest, and I'm having some problems with that, so I got to fix that. And over here, I've got my LED sign is put back together again because it was taken apart because I use these lights for Christmas. So they were up in my windows for Christmas. So now they're repurposed and ready for CoCo Fest again. And that's basically what's going on. Also, I have if you want sort of a sneak preview of Temple of Rom 2, adams.org/downloads/temple.bin, where temple.bin is all in caps.
Okay, wait. Adams.com.
That's sort.
Yeah,
rickadams.org.
Okay.
Yes, I will. rickadams.org /downloads/ and then temple.bin,
okay,
where temple.bin is all in caps. So that's the binary of all it is the original Temple of Rom with a few little tweaks, and one of them is that I'm trying to make the laser sound, go pew 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 instead of ticka 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 ticka. So it's not where I want it to be, but it's I have it to a state where you can do it and see what you can think of it.
Hey, Rick.
Mark just posted it in chat.
I want to, yeah.
On the computer program that you got there behind you,
you
need to put a reference to was it the War Games computer from that movie? Was it Wampar?
Whopper.
You want to play a game?
The Whopper, yeah. Yep. Yeah. Oh, yes. You noticed that. Yes, of course. Yeah, that's my little kiosk thing. It's like, so, you push 1 through 7 for any of those games. And then while you're in the game, you can press break, and that'll go back to that top menu again. So people can flip between different games and play them while they're at the show.
And it's
so,
all
that definitely was a War Games reference.
Yeah, well, at the bottom, you need to put down thermonuclear war.
Somebody did suggest that last year, yes. The only problem with that is what happens when you push it. It's like, well, I'm not going to make a whole new game of thermonuclear war. I suppose I could have some joke. Oh, come on, don't you want to play a game of chess?
You could have Stevie Stroh come up in his nuke face.
Yes. Oh, that's not a bad idea, actually. Yes, that's him trying to get past level 1.
Right.
Although I'll have you know that Steve Stroh did beat OmniStar, so there have been 2 people who have done that so far. So.
Yeah, he's messing things up now.
Yeah, really. So that's all I got.
Okay. I wanted to mention a programmer who taught us if you've got a warp fighter and you've only got 2 dimensions, you're missing a dimension. Mr. Steve Bjork.
Howdy, everybody.
How are you doing, and is anything going on with you in the CoCo world?
Well, trying to get back on track with the assembly language lessons. I'm right now writing a new game that we'll use and we'll dissect for the assembly language second phase. So that'll be coming up shortly. Also, I'm working with Stevie on taking the original 10 or so lessons and getting them put together for some sort of like special just assembly video and having all the files in there and everything set for learning. So we'll get on track as soon as Stevie and I can finish that work and I can finish that game.
Okay,
That's
great.
about it.
All right. Brian Weisler, how are you doing? And anything you've got to talk about today?
Oh, doing well. And really nothing much to talk about, just more of a acquisition. I got myself that's a 502. It's in really good shape. So 502 drive and the whole package there. So yeah, got that one there to read up some floppies. I have quite a few floppies myself that I want to sort back through from times gone by. So picked this up on eBay. So it's in good shape. 2 drives. All seems to work.
Okay, we have no David Ladd sound effects today, just to warn everybody, so I'll have to do it manually. But thank you for the floppy update, Brian. And Jason, the CoCo man, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful. I'm doing wonderful here. I'm just, I'm ready to go. I've got my Mark Overhoser hat, so anytime I need to zoom in on anything, I'm set. And just, getting those Wallaby cables out there, those switcheroos out there, and the Wallaby, the dual RGB cable. Had a few have a few out in the wild there now, and that kind of thing.
Perfect,
and now,
perfect for cross-eyed people, I hear. If you just put 2 monitors.
well, there's, I took these to Tandy Assembly, and I had folks going, I don't necessarily need 2 monitors, but I like having the RGB connector outside and not have to flip the CoCo or unplug my multi-pack or something like that. So
yeah,
I think that just alone.
I'll probably get one from you at the fest there, because then I can have a monitor facing me at the table booth and another one facing the crowd, so I can see them both in RGB rather than one being composite or RF.
Great idea.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll have those at CoCo Fest, and other than that, a lot of the normal world getting in the way of this computer hobby, but just trying to rework things here and work on a couple other retro projects rather, not necessarily CoCo related, but so that's what we're doing here, and just keeping up with demand.
Great.
Sounds good.
Great. Well, I'll go a little bit out of order. Just want to say hi to Al from Jersey. Al, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I figured since this was JerseyTALK today, I needed to be here live rather than just in Yahoo. Oh, look, Jason has a kitty.
Because I believe that's our second CoCo cat.
Yep.
Or third.
Mark hasn't, yeah. And
yes.
Notice Mark and Ron are twins today.
Yeah.
Both with beards, both with Radio Shack t-shirts.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a fun week. My CoCo 3 is on a tray table in my bedroom, hooked up to my bedroom TV, and it has fallen off the tray table twice because I caught my foot on the cord and yanked it off the table twice. So this week I took it apart, made sure everything inside was properly seated. While I had it open, I installed my new DAT board for my Boomerang E2 voice and tech, and put my CoCo SDC in and checked that was still working and hadn't been damaged in the fall, and ran the stress test. And my CoCo 3 is working perfectly.
That's good.
Yeah,
good to hear.
Right. Because if I'd had to buy another CoCo 3, that would have been rough. And I put in an email to Ed Snyder to get a mega multi-pack. and the CoCo. What did he call it? The his little the little sound card with the joystick ports and the RAM.
CoCo PSG.
The CoCo PSG. Thank you, Mark. Since I was ordering a mega multi-pack, and he has a deal where you get the CoCo PSG for an additional $20 instead of the full price of $40. I couldn't pass it up.
Oh, this is a good deal.
Ken is saying in the chat, does it make a nice rattle when you shake it now?
I hope not.
Better not.
I hope
it's not supposed to do that.
It actually did when one of the screws dropped to the floor, but
When you take it apart and when you put it back together, you shouldn't have any extra parts left over.
well, that never happens. It always happens.
If you find a 6809 that you didn't install, that's a bad sign.
No,
I thought if you had parts left over, it just meant you were a patient of design and the original designers.
Yes, it was a dual processor setup. You know, it'd be like the original Apple IIIs when you would get them from you'd open up the box, you'd pull it out, and it wouldn't turn on. You'd open up the top, and you'd find chips half out of the sockets because they would work their way out of the sockets during shipping.
Yeah, because Apple would recommend to take your Apple III, lift it about a couple inches off your desk, and just drop it to reseat the chips.
Yeah, I had to do that with my Atari ST. It had a weird problem in the beginning that
we have a question on the chat on YouTube. It's where would he find the stress test for the SDC?
I got mine directly from Richard, but I think it's up on the CoCo, online, what is it called? The
archive?
The archive, yes.
That doesn't stress test the SDC, though. That just stress tests the RAM, doesn't it?
Yeah, it only stress tests the RAM. There's no stress test. For me, the stress testing of the SDC was trying to load various programs. So if you go to the archive and go to utilities, I think it's up there.
I thought the real stress test was when you dropped it off the TV tray.
Yes, well, that certainly did.
That's a stress test on your heart, though.
Yeah.
We at CoCoTALK do not recommend dropping your CoCo off a TV tray.
I do not see it up on the archive unless I'm looking in the wrong area.
Well, if you find that, let me know, because I've had various issues with my SDC, and I would like to know.
Well, it's not for the SDC. It's a RAM test for the, for the Boomerang.
Gotcha.
For the Boomerang.
I would probably like that too. So.
Well, you can always send me an email, or I'm on the CoCo group on Facebook. Actually, would probably be better.
Okay.
In fact, it's been put up there. It might even be on the file section on the CoCo group.
Okay.
That's another place I've seen it. Hold on, I'm looking now on the files.
Okay. Well, while you're looking, just to introduce last but certainly not least, from Down Under, a programmer who decided Zone 2 should go before Zone 3 in PopStar Pilot, thereby turning some of my hair gray, Mr. Nick Marentes.
G'day, everyone. Yeah, so that was a bit of a short side. I should have put Zone 2 into Zone 3 because it's actually the hardest zone of all five of them. But anyway, what's done is done.
Well, what you really wanted to do, Nick, was just to really beat Stevie's down after he made level 1. Well, he never
well, that's right. Yeah.
Then you throw level 2 at him, it's like, oh God.
That's right. He's shot now.
Otherwise, you can claim you can make it to level 3. You know, we didn't want that. So
yeah.
Well, I do remember that Zone 2 used to be harder than what the actual game ended up, because I had narrower, the corridors and everything that you had to navigate through were narrower. So it was really hard originally.
Yeah, I remember that because Steve and I were testers for it there, and you sent it, and like none of us could get past it except you.
Yeah,
find the thing.
it was hard, so I thought maybe I need to ease up on it a bit. But I should have put level 2 into level 3 instead. But anyway, some people have made it all the way through.
Yeah, I have to admit, it was a thrill to get that to Zone 5 and see those big letters come across the screen. And of course, I immediately died, but I did make it.
Didn't Stevie get all the way through?
He got through level 1.
Actually, he's made it to level 3. I know that. But.
Yeah.
I think the best part of PopStar Pilot is though once you do get into Zone 2 and beyond is all of the extra lives and power ups and checkpoints, because you get so much encouragement to hit the next checkpoint, and then if you're really lucky you can get stuck in a positive loop where you might keep dying over and over again, but you keep hitting the extra life, so you don't have to go.
Yeah, if you're going for straight point score, that's the strategy to use actually.
It is actually. You can just keep looping over and collecting points.
Yeah. I just got a notification from Steve in chat too. He says that the live chat feed was broken in the video, just fixed. So hopefully it's on YouTube now.
Oh, good.
It is working.
Yes, it is working. If you don't,
was it just my video upside down?
And I was going to say, if you don't yet have PopStar Pilot and you live in the U.S., you can get it from the Retro Swag shop and have it shipped from the U.S.
It's quicker that way, yeah.
And it includes all of Nick's games up to that point too, so it's like a big bonus package.
That's right.
Other bonus
and videos from CoCo Fest.
Pinfest.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think a few of us on this panel are featured in that special bonus feature.
Yep,
that's right.
Oops, sorry.
Yeah,
with more hair and 18, 19 years younger. So I think we all had more hair back then.
I had way more in the back, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And you get to see what Brother Jeremy's full song, the CoCo song.
There you go.
Because he performed it live at that fest directly to Kevin Darling. Yeah, so that was a unique moment.
Yeah,
it was definitely unique.
Hello, Darling, if I remember.
Hello, Darling. That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
Never to be repeated.
Never to be repeated. No.
He's played it at other fests.
Yeah, but not to Kevin Darling though. Yeah. Direct face to face.
Going back a little bit, I'm sorry. The 2 files are on the Facebook, the CoCo group on Facebook, and they're in the files area. If you look around August 4th, you'll see a file called boomerang.disc and stress12.disc.
Okay, so it's on Facebook.
And the archive, it sounds like. So.
Well, in the file section of the CoCo group.
Facebook.
Yeah, on Facebook.
The file section. Okay.
Yeah, stress12.disc and boomerang.disc. And if you buy PopStar Pilot direct from Nick, they do come via Boomerang.
Only if you pay extra. Only if you pay extra.
I need to mark.
By the way, we have
I did get a boomerang with mine.
We have a heckler on YouTube says, wasn't it called Mullet Fest?
Oh, that was the Mulleton.
Mulleton. Oh, okay.
Mulleton,
yeah. I will say I do not have and have never had a mullet. And I've never soldered my hair either.
We could believe that, actually.
I've covered both of those.
So while we're on the subject of sponsors, I can read off the sponsors. I don't believe we have the graphic, Curtis, right?
I don't have it.
No, we do not.
No. Just want to thank the folks at the CoCo project, CoCoVGA.com, for your CoCo 1 and 2, connecting it to a modern display and all the additional benefits that come along with that
Dragons
solution.
2.
What's that?
Dragons 2.
Dragons 2. Let's not forget Dragons. The man who invented the boomerang and is conspicuously absent today, Richard Lorbieski, and the boys at Boys on Tech, boysontech.com. Please patronize Richard or he gets cranky.
I think he gets cranky either way.
Yeah, fully and cranky.
He's an angry Muppet.
Yes, speaking of angry Muppets, Jim Brain and go the number 4retro.com for all of your retro innovations needs. Accepting returns now. Contact Jim Brain for more information.
He only accepts
Cloud9
returns.
Yes.
He only accepts returns for Boy Son Tech. He doesn't have.
Yeah, that is true. Cloud9, cloud9tech.com, sdpack.com, and of course, the RGB2 SCART solution that is #1 in Uruguay. The switcheroo. I believe we are live on. Are we live on Roku, Mr. Ron Delvaux?
I cannot tell you because my Roku's in the other room.
James Diffendacker said we are on.
Oh,
live.
good.
Okay. Ron's wife will tell us
Yes.
in the other room. If
She
we're
would if
live
she
on.
was here, but
Might have to get Pearl to check.
yes.
And as Al mentioned, you can get PopStar Pilot and many, many other games and T-shirts and mugs and bomb threats and all sorts of things on the Retro Swag Shop at 8bit256.com. Don't forget to check out the CoCo Crew podcast, as well as the folks at Productions.com. And of course, Ed Snyder, the Renaissance man, the Leonardo da Vinci of our community at thezipterzone.com. And back to you, Nick. Do we want to talk about your
my
updates?
latest project? Yeah, well, I've been doing a bit of work on my next game, GunStar. I've mentioned before that I've created a tile editor so I can do the scrolling background graphics. So the tile editor I've just written in BASIC, and I'll just share my screen so you can see the tile editor, and I'll just explain it from there. So just bringing it up now. So has that come up?
Yep.
Right. So, and you can see my mouse pointer in the front of it.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. So this is just a tile editor. Well, actually, that's not true. It's a map editor. The tiles I draw them up on well, I've got an Amiga and I just draw them up in a graphics package there, and then from there it gets transferred into this map editor. So this program lets you design the maps or the backgrounds that are going to be scrolled during the game. So the program here, you can see there's two areas. On the left is where all the tiles come up. Now I've only drawn a few. As I keep drawing or creating the maps, I'll add more tiles, and that's what these green and blue squares are. They're vacant for tiles, but eventually this will be full of tiles, and I can then take, you can see a little flashing square up in the top left here. So I can move that around and pick a tile. Let's say I'll pick this, whatever this pipe is. Once I've chosen the tile, I can then move across to the right-hand side of the screen, and you can see the cursor's moved over to this side now. And I can move that cursor around, and I can then drop whatever the tile was that I selected on the left. So I'll go into this clear area up in the top. So I've already created a bit of a background. I mean, I've still got a long way to go, but and I'll explain what the graphics are in a minute. But what I do is I can then place that tile that I just chose on the left and literally just draw it out on the screen and create my backgrounds. Now, what I've done here on the right-hand side, it represents two screens from the game. The game itself will use a lower resolution. So on this screen, I can actually view 2 screens at once. Now there's a little mark here in the middle of the screen that shows you the boundary between the, say, one screen, which is down this half, and the next screen that's going to scroll in the game is going to scroll down is in the top half. So I can design 2 screens at a time this way. Once I draw up the background, I can then view it the way it'll view in the actual game. Now, as I said, the game is going to be in low res in order to speed things up, because it just takes less RAM if it's a lower res. So if I've got a function here where I hit V and see these yellow, can you see these yellow lines that have just appeared on the bottom? Okay, the yellow line symbolizes how high the screen is, this line here, and the bottom line shows you the part of the horizontal width of the screen that will be viewed in the game. So what the game does is the background's actually wider than what you see on the screen. So while the background is going to be scrolling down, you'll actually be able to fly to the left or to the right and see the rest of the graphics. So the yellow line, I can move it to see a bit more to the left or a bit more to the right. Once I've chosen the part I want to view in the low res mode, I can then select that and it'll draw it up, and I'll just speed it up because I'm running VCC here. So that's what that part of the screen will look like in the final game. So it's lower resolution and it's showing the windowed part of the display you saw before. And that part will just scroll downwards and left and right to expose the extra area of screen. So just jumping back. So yeah, does that make sense about my windowed area?
Yep.
I mean, yeah. And to explain what these graphics are, the game's going to have several levels, 4 levels. And as you progress through the game, there'll be different scenery. And the first level, you'll be flying over an Earth scenery. The goal is that you're supposed to try escape Earth. Earth has been overrun by an alien race, and of course, like they always are. And your first mission is to escape Earth, to get out of Earth, away from the aliens. The goal of the game is to navigate your way through space back to the alien homeworld, where you go and give them a taste of their own medicine and blow them up. But yeah, level 1, you're flying over Earth, trying to escape. So what we're doing, what you see here is you flying over a city, an Earth city. So these are rooftops over various skyscrapers. You can see the streets of the city as well. And on top of all the roofs, you can see all the various air conditioning ducts or whatever details are on top of a building. So you're flying over the Earth city, and of course there'll be aliens attacking you, trying to kill you, of course. The goal is that once you do get through this level, you'll then embark into space, and it'll be a space background. After space, you finally reach the alien homeworld, so it'll be an alien background, and then finally it'll be an alien city background. So the graphics will vary between levels, and hence why I've got all this space here to draw up more tiles, which I'll do later. It'll take a fair while to draw up all the graphics. But this is the tool I've written in BASIC. It's all totally in BASIC. If I hit break, I can actually break out. You can see the BASIC program. Whoops, I'll just slow it down a bit. So
Nick, is the game normally in the 320 mode, or is it stay in the...
No, the game is in the lower res mode.
Why is that?
The map, well, lower res means the graphics will take up less memory, and less memory means it's going to be a lot quicker to process all the graphics and the game and all that. The reason I needed to get as much speed is because I've developed a new graphics engine in this program, which I described on my my blog site, and it works a bit differently to what I've done in the past. Well, actually, no, it's a graphics engine I developed way back in 1984 for the Tirasati Model 1. So it's a very old engine that I created, and I'd written a game for the Tirasati Model 1 called Escape Zone. And back then I wanted an engine whereby I could have almost like have multi-layered graphics and overlaid almost like big sprites playing while the game played in the background, and a few other features as well. And it was quite good on the Tirasati Model 1. And this GunStar is basically bringing that original idea that I had forward to the color computer. So the engine here is a bit more time consuming in what it has to do, but I'm hoping that over time the benefits of what this engine can do will outweigh the disadvantages in CPU speed, because it will allow me to have well, a two-layer graphics, you could say, very easily, and it lets me scroll the background. It says whenever you're creating sprites or whatever in any game, you've always, because we don't have hardware sprites, you have the problem whereby when you draw a sprite, you need to store what's behind it before you put it on there, and then when you need to move that sprite, you have to restore the background that was overwritten before, and then place your sprite in a new position. There is a fair bit of processing there to get that sprite effect. And the bigger the sprites, the slower that is. It just makes it very complex. The graphics engine I have now does all that very easily and automatically in the background. I don't have to do any of that masking, any of that storing of the background, nothing.
So and I have a question.
Yep.
So, one of the things with the 6309 support was that it was going to help kind of do some of that.
Yeah, this engine copies a lot of RAM around, and this is the sort of game that would be great if I had a hardware blitter like Commodore Amigas and all that, but we don't. Mm-hmm. So because it tends to move a fair bit of RAM around for its housekeeping, I needed the fastest way I could move memory around, and the reason it needs a 6309 is because the 6309 has that instruction called TFM, mm-hmm. which is basically a memory copy command in one command. So where on a 6809 you would have to use fancy techniques like stack blasting to get the speed of a copy, that would make for a fairly long program, and a lot of registers get used in doing that. It gets fairly complicated in
it's complicated with interrupts, especially because
interrupts, especially because the interrupts will obviously interrupt the copy in a stack blast, and that slows the stack blast down as well. Whereas TFM is a single instruction. You can do where stack blasting uses up a lot of instructions, TFM just uses a handful of instructions. So it's quicker to program, it's quicker to function as well. It actually runs a little bit faster on 6309, and it works with interrupts as well. An interrupt can occur, and the TFM command, it'll come back off an interrupt, back into the TFM, exactly where it left off before. It's much cleaner. You can have interrupt-driven sound effects that still sound clean, even though you're copying all these big areas of memory. So hence I'm doing the game as a 6309 version initially. So that will give me the speed I need to do all the things I want this to do. Later on, if everything is a success, I will then go back and try do a 6809 version that uses Stack Blast. At the most, I might need to take out a few functions and whatever, just to keep the speed up. But the point is that this is going to be 6309 initially, because taking advantage of a few of the instructions of a 6309, not all of them, so that it wouldn't be a big job to convert back to 6809. But the TFM instruction in particular is very beneficial for the engine I have here. Now, I do have a part of the game. I'll just reset out of this. So do that.
While you're doing that, I just have one quick question.
Yeah, far away.
Levels, like you said, you have different tile sets you can use for different levels. Are you also allowing different palette settings so you can actually change the color of?
I can do. So all 4 levels will have a separate palette set. I don't change the palette during the game, during the play. So it'll be 16 colors, but of the 4 levels, I'll vary the colors there. So the alien landscape might have more of an alien color scheme, that sort of thing. But I won't be doing palette changes during a screen as such. This is what, like PopStar Pilot did. You could do that, but because the engine's already using up a lot of CPU time, I figured I may not have enough time to go doing those sort of tricks. I'll just run up my GunStar. So that's my GunStar.
And while he's doing this, this is a great significance of his map editor. Is, he's done it on the CoCo. I'm too lazy to do mine on the CoCo. You've done a good job there.
Well, I've always, to keep the faith, I guess,
yes,
and keep playing on the CoCo, to have a bit of the retro programming feeling. I do it on the CoCo. Now, in most cases, it's a little, it can be slow, although I'm not having many problems with the speed of the editor on the CoCo. But if it is, I just run it under VCC. And you can run VCC at a higher rate, so I make up for the speed loss if I need it by running that program on VCC. But yeah, I'm just trying to keep that whole retro feel by doing it all on the CoCo.
And now, that's kind of the reason I commented, because I figured this is a comment you would say, and it's very good because everybody's got a different style on how they work.
Yeah, that's right. I mean,
I think Nick and I and maybe Bill are the only ones that actually still use the actual CoCo.
Yeah, that's right. We're the old schoolers.
Yeah.
we're the ones you can't teach new tricks.
Yeah.
Well, me anyway.
I still use EdTasm.
I'm assuming you're not. Yeah, well, I still use EdTasm as well, at least a modified version of EdTasm. I'm assuming you're not hearing the sound effects. I didn't want the sound effects to come through at the moment. Is that right?
We're not hearing anything, no.
Right, that's good, because it's playing music at the moment, so I wanted it to be quiet. So I'll go ahead and start the game. So it just wipes the screen. It says prepare for battle. Now, this is the game so far without any of the tiles in there. So I've got it just printing colored bars at the moment. Ignore the weird flashing red around the border. That's a speed test that I use for checking my program's speed. And also, it's probably not scrolling as smoothly as what it actually is because my bandwidth is very, very slow here. So you're probably not getting a good representation of the smoothness of the scroll. But you can see the scroll, and imagine all this having all the tiles that you saw just before in the tile editor. So you would see the city background that I had there scrolling down the screen. And of course, your spaceship will be overlaid over that. What I have done is up here in the top left is the score display, and I've just got it randomly, or not randomly, but just incrementing by 10, just so I can see it changing. Now that's being drawn. That took me 5 minutes to put in. That was because of my where I was saying before that my graphics engine may take up a bit of time doing all this background work. The benefits of it is that later on, when I go to use it, it's very easy then to add graphics. I can draw whatever graphics I want, or I have CPU time for, and I just print them on there as if it's a blank screen, as if there's no background. And that's what I've done up here. I've just basically just poked or written data directly to the RAM there, and that's it. I don't have to worry about erasing what's in the background, restoring what's in the background, nothing. It's all done for me in the engine. So I just merely just printed the text for the score there, and I'll probably have some displays to show you how many spaceships you still got and energy levels and whatever. And it's almost like having a second layer, and the background scrolling and the foreground is completely independent from that. It just makes it very easy. So hopefully the time that it uses up in doing the engine in the background is I'm rewarded by the fact that I'm saving so many cycles in trying to maintain that background or restore that background. So that's the stage at the moment. I was hoping to have the actual routine throwing up the proper tiles so you can see the city going, but I ran into a bug in my code and I just didn't have time to fix it up in time. So I just show you this anyway. But yeah, it'll all make more sense once you see all the graphics in place. And bearing in mind that this background is currently just scrolling down, but it will also go left and right and expose the extra graphics on the side, on the left and right hand side. So it's a wider screen that's actually scrolling down, and we're just seeing a window. And as you fly, if you fly to the left, the background will scroll over to the left. If you fly more to the right, the background will then scroll over to the right. So
and if you ran out of time, you could convert this into audio spectrum analyzer 2.
Oh yeah, well that's right. With all the color bars, yeah. So hopefully, I mean, it's an effect I haven't seen too much of in any CoCo game, whereby the gimme chip itself in the CoCo 3 has that ability to be able to show you a windowed area of the screen when you enable the hardware horizontal enable. That's fine. The only thing is there's a lot of other things I can do in this, and I don't have the restrictions that you normally would have if you tried to use the hardware. The hardware does, when you program for the hardware, you are tied into what the hardware has been designed to do. And there's a few effects I've got, ideas I've got for the game.
Well, even your score, for example, like if you had
the score for starters,
your score would scroll left and right off the screen too.
Well, that's right. If I was using hardware, I would have to have the routine would have to take care of the score being able to stay in the one spot while the background scrolled not only up and down but left and right. I don't have to do anything. I'm just printing the text in the same spot. No. In this case, I'm not doing any masking either, and hence the text is quite big. But I mean, I could do masking if I wanted it to be a perfect merge onto the background. If the graphics are a bit finer, I could do that. But I mean, I don't have to worry about having to maintain the background at all. It's all automatically done by the graphics engine. And when I say graphics engine, I'm not talking about a big routine. Thanks to the TFM instruction, it's actually a very small block of code. The whole graphics engine, it's surprisingly small. That's why I've fallen in love with the TFM instruction. It's brilliant. But yeah, I can go drawing stuff on this foreground and not worry about what destruction it's doing in the background, and that makes the coding easier as well. Anyway, you'll see over time when I get the tiles on there, I'll add a few more foreground things, and I mean, I even had an idea that when the game goes into a demo mode, I like having a demo mode this time, so that when you don't start the game, you know, you're looking at the title screen, it'll then go into a demonstration mode. When the demonstration mode, which is basically like starting a game of its own, I was going to have the words on the screen or a logo that's saying demo mode, and that'll be just superimposed over the actual everything that's happening underneath, and that's easy to do. I just print it on the screen, and that gives a nice little, well, very clear look of a two-layered type of graphics. That's what I had done on my original Tirasati Model 1 game that I developed this engine on before. It worked quite well then, so hence why I've decided to try and do a revised version for the CoCo. So, not saying this is the greatest engine out there. I mean, because of the overhead, it's going to be hard to get games like Chet Simpson's excellent Digger 3, which uses the hardware and he can get 60 frames per second. That's fine, but the advantages of this engine are a bit different to what you could get from just straight hardware and all that. So anyway,
so this resolution actually looks very good, and the screenshots you were showing, I wouldn't have immediately known. It almost looked like it might have been 320, so it looks really good. I have a question though about. Okay.
Yeah, if you look at the thickness, the horizontal line thickness of the score, that's the height of a pixel. That's 1 pixel pixel width. Like the horizontal lines on the 0, that's the minimum size.
Mm-hmm. I have a question though about performance though in future games, because I was talking a little bit about with Chet on Discord about you know, what we could do in that 640 mode when it comes to arcade level graphics or arcade, you know, scrolling, and you know, you can do things in 640 mode if you don't scroll, but when you start pushing those pixels around, it is more demanding. It sounded like he was saying.
Well, it's more RAM, so.
Yeah. So, but we do have the RAM problem is kind of going away. So.
Well, it's not so much that it's more RAM. You have less colors. It's still basically you're looking at 2 bits per color, where in the 16 color mode you got 4 bits per color. So it's the same amount of RAM for the same space. You're just reducing the number of colors.
Is it harder for the processor at all?
No.
No, not really. But compared to this graphics mode that I've ended up using, this one's half of what you were getting. Well, actually, it's a bit less than half even, because it's a bit narrower horizontally as well.
Yeah, it's closer to a third.
Isn't that about 1/4 the memory, though?
A fourth or a third, I'd have to check my notes again, but it just means that
saving memory.
Yeah. Now the thing is that this graphics, this game is basically moving entire a lot of RAM, in that the entire screen is being copied around and being manipulated. You could use this same idea on a game whereby you don't need the entire screen. You might have a game that has a windowed area that's where the game is, and the rest of the screen might be, you know, static displays. So in that case, you could actually modify this graphics engine to only do a portion of the screen if you want. And you could have a little area windowed on the bigger screen that does any scrolling or whatever.
Yeah. Tile maps are very flexible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
well, that's what I did in Super Pitfall and Z89.
Yes, see, and that's where using the hardware, although it's fast, you are restricted to the fact that with you have to use the entire screen. So you've got a lot of RAM to play around with, unless you start doing other weird tricks. It then complicates the code. But where, like in Super Pitfall, you only wanted to scroll and window the top half of the screen, say. If you used a hardware version of that, you have to resort to other weird tricks because the hardware wants to use the entire screen.
So it'll scroll like your score,
so
at the same time.
For games like Chet's Digger 3, that's fine because he's designed it for that hardware.
Yeah. Contras is another one that used the full,
and Contras as well. But this method is a software approach, and it gives me then the flexibility to decide how I want the in quotes hardware to work. So I'm creating the features here, and I can tailor it to only work on the area of memory I need. So, like I said, this is using the entire screen, but the game, depending on the game, you might only have a smaller area that needs to be scrolled. Well, this engine can do that smaller area, and therefore also take up less CPU time. And because it then takes up less CPU time, you could do a game then in a higher res mode rather than have to resort to a lower res if you want. It's got a fair bit of flexibility so you can tailor it for whatever your game actually needs. It all depends on the game. But this game,
I wanted to interject something about the 640 mode, and really the difficulty and the memory requirements are pretty much predicated on the type of horizontal scrolling that you want to do.
Yes,
and it's the same problem that we have with 320 mode, where within in PopStar Pilot you used even odd pages, where as a digger with the speed for the differential between the guard and the player, it was much easier to go to 4 pixels. And with something like the 4 color mode, it's actually going to be more difficult to get that smooth scrolling in because you are going to have to use more pages for it.
Yeah, that's right. In 16 color mode, you've got 2 pixels per byte. In 640, you've got 4 pixels per byte.
Right.
So, but it all depends on the game. Like in Chet's game, his game does utilize the whole screen, and he can use the hardware, and it works fine for that. But it's just that for GunStar, I just thought I'd bring forward an old engine that I had, which worked well on the TeoStati Model 1, and I thought, let's adapt it for the color computer and see what I can do with that. See, I can put big sprites on this screen. I can fill the screen with graphics, all while the graphics are still scrolling. This routine is actually running the 2-channel interrupt-driven sound as well. I've disabled the test routine I had in there. I had a test routine in there last week when I had it, whereby you could press buttons on the keys to hear the different sound effects. So this is running interrupt-driven sound with full-blown explosions and sound effects. And it still has enough speed to scroll the screen at this rate. I suspect that once I put in all the additional sprites and explosions and whatever else I decide, it'll probably drop down in speed a little bit. But that's all right because I want it to actually scroll a little bit slower than that. So anyway, I think I've ranted on long enough on this project.
No, this was great, Nick. I think we want to take a short break, right, Mark, and then come back and hopefully, if Chet's still around, maybe we can get an update on what you're doing, Chet. And
Chet can tell us a bit about his engine.
That's right. Yeah. So, Mark, my producer, Mark. What are we going to do for this commercial? Because we don't have commercials.
I don't know. Let's have a sing-along.
Okay.
Can anyone do a David Ladd impersonation? Maybe?
Really?
Let me go quickly shave my head. I'll be right on that.
We just need a,
Thank you. You're too kind.
Hello. Actually, why don't...
I just like breaking things.
I just like breaking things.
Get your switcheroo and wallaby at cocoband.biz.
Has anyone put their hands up for who's going to rage quit? who's going to do the Steve rage quit?
Who's going to play the role of Stevie Stroh?
Hey, we've got Stevie's picture up there, so we can just have him do it.
Yeah, I guess Tom has volunteered.
Yeah, I guess
the role Stevie Stroh will be played by Tom C.
I'm the only one who could kill the stream, so I guess that would have to be me.
He has more of a New Jersey interpretation of the character.
It brings some depth to it,
All right, well, Mark, why don't we do this?
Bada bing club.
Yeah. Whoever's sharing their screen, maybe Nick, why don't you throw something up there or put up that test pattern you have on your game engine, and we'll take 2 minutes. If you want to share your screen, somebody, and just. The
other thing I could do, since we're talking to Chet about a digger, he did put up a demo with stuff as he put it as fooling around, and I think that was about a minute video. I could throw that on as a kind of a lead-in.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's about right.
Once I find it in my bazillion tabs here.
So as they say in the military, smoke them if you got them.
We'll be right back after this message from L. Curtis Boyle.
Yeah, as soon as I get it ready.
Get out your Orphan Annie decoder rings.
Did somebody press the play button?
Is it playing for you guys or?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Just a steady screen, not actually playing.
Is it doing that?
It has a play button.
Okay, let me try rewinding. What's playing here? Is it playing now?
Delvaux, this is your chance.
Yep, there it goes.
There we go.
Yeah, it is
There we go.
Okay, full screen, it doesn't work. That's what I just discovered.
The Golgothan, yeah, I love him.
Is that the name of the character then?
Yeah.
He just appears randomly.
Yes.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, it's good.
Over.
Yeah, where's my stop sharing here? Now, Chet, I think you had another video, which for some reason I thought it's the one I had it queued up, but where you were showing some of the little sub levels.
Yes. Where you go into the back rooms.
Let's see if I can find that one again here.
I see Rob Inman's gone to his Muppet head, and he's the one that's with the exploding head. Beaker.
Okay, can you guys see that?
There we go.
Yeah, there we go.
Oops.
It's sort of a reference to my destruction of several CoCo 3 boards.
I don't know if the sound's coming through or not, but
No,
and that's quite all right. I mean,
that's all right. Yeah,
is pretty inconsequential for doing this. Yeah. So these are just a couple of the updates that I've been working on, which has actually caused a bit of headache because the original game engine was just not really intended for any of this. In fact, the largest level it was intended for was a 39 by 24. And that's been expanded, quite a bit to the 80 and now 128, blocks wide by 24. And then you actually have sub levels that are in this, which it absolutely definitely wasn't designed for, which actually kind of gives you a couple of different ways to travel around the map, because there are some ways that you can, some levels where you can actually come in one area, and then when you come out of it, you're actually in a different area. You can travel through tunnels into the back way, and there's different sets of creatures that are going in there. You saw one of them up front. It's the Golgothan. I actually took that from Kevin Smith's Dogma. So it's if you've ever seen the movie, you know what it is. So the Gomers, which is the little guys that chase them around, they got to go to the bathroom somewhere, and it's kind of the result of that. So you want to watch out for those areas. He's kind of a proximity creature where you get close enough, he starts popping up. There's several different types of elements that are going into the game like that, and it's actually caused some a lot of changes in the engine because it was just never really designed for that. In the holiday preview, I introduced some of the overlay stuff, which was a little bit difficult because that had to be integrated into the map editing process and the level design. So all of that stuff had to be in there. And unfortunately, for that, it was actually okay because it's very limited. But we want to go ahead and take that to something that can cover the whole screen. So when he falls down through those through these those trap tunnels or those trap doors, you actually see him falling behind the all of the foreground and all of that, instead of actually coming down on top of it. So you kind of get that feeling that he's actually going through different caverns within there, and you're playing it. So there's a lot of different elements like that that are going into that have been going into it, that have been kind of keeping me busy and making sure that the map converter is kind of been the big thing, because all of that data that I've been associating with that for how often that the little Golgothan creature comes out, jumping from one room to another, jumping from one complete level to another. All of that has to be included into the level data, and all of that has been going through the converter and then pushing out. So what I have now, and something I'm hoping to push out this weekend, is that when you go in and you edit your maps, you can actually define the data layout for your map. So if you've got your header, you've got your list of objects, you can actually define what order their X and Y coordinates are, the different bits, how they're packed into something. So because within mine, if you look at Nick's editor on the left hand side, you had all of the different tiles. I can actually add different attributes to each individual to define their behavior. So if you can dig it, if it's a ladder, you have all of these different attributes, and then I can actually go into the map level itself and tweak those at an individual tile level. So it gives me a little bit of flexibility in the level design, and a lot more power in being able to say, okay, well, we've got these kind of puzzle elements. How do we express them in the level design? So that's kind of the stuff that I've been working on and getting enhanced in since Christmas and that release. So.
Hey, Chad.
Yeah, it's looking cool.
Yeah, I like the little sub levels. That was an actual, I was remembering the old RoboCop game that Greg Zumwalt did have that kind of element where you'd walk through a door into something kind of behind, and you've added that same element with much better graphics, actually. So
yeah, I think somebody posted a history of that in Discord a couple of days ago, and I just watched that in the different versions, and they just really hammered the CoCo version.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I have a lot of questions for Greg Zumwalt on RoboCop and on Predator, but typically I would probably blame Tandy and Tandy trying to make things fit into cartridges.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That was a big problem with them. But and on the cartridge note, I actually went through and did make some changes, and there's a possibility that Digger, at least for the Fest, will be a ROM pack version, so you'll have quicker loading off of that. You can just stick it into a pack and go, because we've got all of the sound stuff that's been going. I think you guys highlighted that last week.
Yeah, I think we did mention that.
At least RoboCop is pleasant to play. If you are depressed or suicidal, I do not recommend Predator.
Yeah, David Ladd did a review of it on his page years ago, and it was quite. You just plummet to his death, and oh, really?
Yep, I happened to watch that right after I watched the history of RoboCop. I was like, man, I was like, okay, it's just not these guys that hate it.
Well, the thing is, oh, sorry.
Sorry. I think he also did Predator as well, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so with
Predator's
Predator,
a much worse game, though. The level of difficulty, especially with the joystick controls and the keyboard controls, it's very unforgiving. So it was terrible to play. It was frustrating as hell. RoboCop, it was a bit more balanced. I mean, it wasn't the best game, but it was playable. I didn't mind.
Playable.
Well, I think the best of the 32K cartridges that Tandy had back in the day was Super Pitfall by Steve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, Predator and RoboCop are actually 64K and 128K cartridges because they actually have the.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think mainly to hold digitized sound.
Oh gosh.
That beautiful
the digitized
soundtrack
sound does take up a lot of room. I mean, Rampage and Super Pitfall and Arkanoid were all 32K cartridges. And I just managed to put what I could in that size. I didn't want to go up larger because then the cartridge would end up costing more.
Yeah.
Kind of hurts sales when you do that.
Well, it was certainly a better game than Predator and RoboCop.
if you want to play the Predator on the SDC image, it does have the cheat codes. However, so essentially you have God mode, but it doesn't really help you because you still fall through all of the chasms, and then anytime you fall and you go to the previous screen, then you go back to the new screen and all the monsters you just killed have returned. So it's just a nightmare of horror.
Yeah, I mean, the cheat on that, giving you infinite lives, I mean, that helps because you can keep trying it if you're willing to self-abuse.
Come on, Rob, tell us how
the problem
really
was you can still die from the environment, trying to jump from little platform to little platform, and that was the problem playing the game. That part was too hard. You don't often get killed by the actual creatures in there. You're usually getting killed because of the environment, and that's, I think, why the cheat mode doesn't really help. You need to be able to float and fly to make that actually.
Exactly. If you had a no-clip mode like they do on a modern game engine where you could just float through the whole environment, then that's the way you could see the game. But yeah, so I would love to have Greg on to explain that.
Interesting statistic is you realize we have 4 game programmers, commercial grade game programmers on the show at the moment. And we got John Strong, Steve Bjork, Chet, and there's me.
And Rick Adams, if he's ever.
Oh yes, I forgot. Yeah, he's not there at the moment. There would have been 5.
He had to leave.
Ah,
bummer.
Oh well. So 4 at the moment. Greg Zumwalt, I remember reading at some point that Greg used to do his programming at his work, where he used to work. They used to let him have a CoCo there on his desk as well, and he used to program CoCo games, for Radio Shack while he was working, and as long as he could also do whatever his real job was at the time. So what a dream job, eh? 2 jobs at the same time.
Yeah, and Greg, I mean, like Steve, was one of the most prolific programmers. He had a ton of stuff. He did stuff for American Business Computers and Radio Shack, and he published at least 20 to 30 titles too. So
yeah,
he was definitely trying to crank them out, and I think that probably suffered the quality somewhat too.
Well, in some ways, Predator. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, even Steve, I think you said you could have done better on some of the games, but you had deadlines to meet. So
yeah, I mean, that's always the case. This is a job. It's not something. Oh, gee, it's not like the case of the guys over at id Software, where they'll spend months or years on a project just because, oh, well, we can do it, and stuff like that. But no, if you've got a slave like Activision, no, you got to get that done by X amount of time.
Yeah, and you mentioned you'd for example, on Rampage, you got it done in basically 6 weeks because you're trying to make holiday sales or something like that.
Oh, it was better than that. It was 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a nice, well, it wasn't just trying to get it done for the holiday. I could have done it, in 2 months and still made it for the holiday. They had put in the contract a bonus if I got it done by a certain date. By the time that everything got said and done in the contract, I go, oh, that's only 30 days. So I worked my butt off and I got Rampage done. And, for a 30-day project, I don't think it turned out too bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And obviously worth the bonus if you worked your butt off for it.
Steve, back to Super Pitfall. If you had to do that again without memory limitations, move the audio to a sound chip, and use a 6309, or maybe not all of them together, but would that have allowed you to do it in full screen?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Yeah, the sound, I think, took most of the time that you were doing because you were doing the...
Well, sound stole about 25% of the CPU cycles. And there's an option there to shut off. Actually, it's the music that's stealing the time. So if you turn off the music, the game actually plays 25% faster because I can get that time. So a little smoother, a little faster. But yeah, it just, if I have a 512K CoCo, I could done a lot better.
Yeah, there's other thing because back then at Radio Shack, most things except for a few of the Sierra games and stuff were pretty well, try to fit it in 128K, no matter what, because that was the bulk of their computers out on sale this time.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the way Radio Shack looked like. You got to remember there's Tandy and there's Radio Shack. Radio Shack was just selling the hardware and the software. Radio Shack had to convince the retail to buy it, the customer, and trying to convince somebody that, oh yeah, you can play this game, but you also got to spend, what was it, $150, $200 for the 512K upgrade? Yeah, it's a hard sell to say, to play this $25 game, you got to go spend quite a bit more.
Yeah, well, it's kind of the same thing they did with the speech sound cartridge, because you basically had to buy a multi-pack and a speech sound cartridge to plug it into a disc system. So what disc games were going to support that at that point?
And which is why it never sold very well. And then, of course, once the CoCo 3 came out with its faster clock, and the sound card didn't work with the faster clock.
Yeah.
What's the difference now? Now when you get a CoCo, it's 128 and you want to upgrade it. You want to get a 6309. So what's the minimum we'd have to spend?
Well, a 2 meg upgrade is only $50 now compared to 512K for 200 back in the day.
And also, if you look at the inflation difference between now and 37 years ago, it's quite a bit. So, back then, $250 is more like closer to $700 or $1,000 today.
Yeah, basically right now you can get a 2 meg upgrade for the price of a cartridge back then with inflation.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So there was a question in chat, just to kind of loop back to you, Chet. There was a question in chat about your older games. I know you pulled some of those off the archive. Is there a place where people can buy them?
No, not at the moment. The only one that was pulled off was Digger 2. The version that's up there that was up there is corrupted. So there are some problems with it, and there are some bugs. I actually have the original code back up and working now. I was able to get that done after Christmas, so there's a good possibility of a re-release to that. One of the things that I am planning on doing, because the version of Digger 1 that's up in the archive is a beta version, that was actually one that got sent out to one of my testers. I'm not really sure how the hell it ended up there, but I'd like to find out. That is, I have a disassembly in progress of that to kind of revamp some of the things in that particular game to get the sound data back in. I may actually do it with one of the sound cards.
When you guys go back to your programming from leaving it set for so long, did you ever put notes in there that are kind of funny to see now?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm going through the version of Digger now. I'm unpacking and refactoring a whole lot of it. That's one of the pieces of code that I do have, and I'm finding some notes in there that that I left myself, which are quite amusing.
Were they like specific to the times that you were in, like I don't know, like, can you share us maybe one that was a little funny? Or
nothing that I can really say on air, no.
Okay, that's enough.
But yeah, it's basically you're a loser for being this lazy, because there's some code. None of the of Digger 2 or 3 was ever optimized. That was actually part of the implementation. That was one thing. Actually, there's a lot of stuff in there that was just intentionally done to be slow, and I've got some notes in there that are just kind of like slapping my own hand in the future now. So it's actually funny to go back and see this. Yep, that was just dumb.
Yeah, we did that in Nitrous 9 too. There's comments in there. There's a mixture of comments that I made, like, why did the original programmers at Microware do this? This is retarded.
Mm-hmm.
There's stuff where I, go like, I have no idea what this code's doing. Type thing. And then there's also bits of my own stuff where I disassembled a routine, thought it was doing something, then later on I figured out that's actually wrong. It did something else, but I didn't feel like recommenting all the old code, so I just throw in one note. All comments following this point for the next 150 lines are wrong, and then we just left it at that.
How about you, Steve?
Actually, I got it whipped out of me pretty early, because at the companies I worked for, we'd take our software, send it to the attorneys, they would then go through and copyright it. But somebody in their office would have to read through it, and we would get comments back from the lawyers about, why is there this language in this code? It's not professional. So we would have to yank it out. And after doing that 2 or 3 times at the company I was working for, I said, screw it. Can't do this type of stuff anymore. So also the other thing too is you're running into, in those early systems, limited space where the comments that you have in your code really got to be there, because if you have too many comments, there's not enough space for the actual code. So that was another thing you were battling. So you commented the code so you could understand when you came back to it later, not to give yourself a little jive later.
Yeah, I think that changed later. Like when I was doing Nitrous 9 development, I mean, you could assemble a program that was 512K source code. So yeah, we divide into sections. You use this next chunks. You could edit them in smaller chunks, but we did fully comment it because we were trying to figure it out as we were going along. We had no idea what the code was supposed to do in the first place. It wasn't code we designed. It was code we were trying to.
And the other aspect I was going to say too is I'm having a lot of people look at my code. There's code that I now write that goes out into Creative Commons. Well, if it's going out there in the public, I don't want to write a lot of private comments.
Yeah, that's true. You could be like Dave Edson, embed the comments in the code itself, so that actually, if you just do a raw memory dump, you get all kinds of little messages flying by. So, you know, tributes to his girlfriend at the time. And
but now I do remember coding color file 2 during that time. The shuttle Challenger blew up, and I put a little bit of a comment in there. Remember the heroes of Challenger, or something like that.
But now we have memory, right?
Yes, now we have memory, but we also have very public code. So, you know, yeah, you have to kind of watch it.
The 3 Muggeteers in the CoCo 3 is essentially that bit of spare RAM, so they put picture of themselves in there without telling Radio Shack.
Well, the Radio Shack told them they had to put random data in.
Yeah, yeah.
They sure put random data in.
Not so random though.
Mm-hmm. It's random enough for a random number generator routine to use, I guess.
Yeah.
Great. So did we, in terms of Digger, you know, I was going to say that those little caves reminded me of NES or like Legend of Zelda. So that was really cool. Chet, what's your plan as to when it's finished? Are you going to sell it like Nick and Rick on 8bit256.com, or do you have a different way of getting it out?
It's I mean, all of the stuff I release is free. I mean, I don't.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't have any need to sell it, but right now I'm looking at a fest release.
Okay.
So well, yeah, I imagine you have to sell for something if you do release a cartridge version, because I mean that's going to physically cost you to make.
Well, yeah, I mean you'll basically, I mean you'll basically buying the cartridge and the sound card. I mean you won't be having to pay for the game. I mean at that point you're looking at like $90 or something, you know, when you start combining the costs and all of that. But no, you know, it's you've got you know, a sound card that's you know capable of you know, creating sound that was equal to that, you know, that was being done back in the day. So you've got that, you've got it in ROM, and it's fast load. So there's actually quite a bit of stuff in there. You know, the problem is, you know, once that does expand, you know, getting that to compressed into that small space.
Yeah, well, we do have some MMU-based cartridge ROM stuff now too. So Flash.
Yeah, so there's a lot of options for it. But yeah, I'm looking at a fest release. So there's really a whole lot of stuff that's going into it, and then of course, you know, all the tools and all of that. I've been making updates as often as possible up on GitHub, so those are available. I'll be doing binary releases of all of the stuff like I did with the emulation for the GMC card on VCC.
Okay, well, at least I have to send you like a free beer or something at some point. So
that'll work.
Oh, there is no question in that response.
Or our joke cola.
Or a burrito.
Oh yeah, no, you don't want me on caffeine, man.
It's like shareware, but you send beer instead of money.
Yeah, it's beerware.
Yeah, beerware. That actually was a thing for a while. I do remember some people actually did do their shareware that way.
Actually, I remember reading an article a few years ago about open source licenses and compliance, and there was one something the guy want, if you're going to use it for commercial purposes, you need to send them a Gibson electric guitar of some sort. So some company used it, and you shipped them a guitar. Somebody else said, if I'm in town, buy me a beer, and they have a case in the storage room in case he ever drops by, they can fulfill their end of the contract.
Well, beerware nowadays would actually be pretty cool because there's so many microbreweries all over the world now.
Oh, yeah.
So you get all kinds of local beers you'd never be able to try on your own. So Chet could, get drunk on international terms.
Yep.
Yeah, just go buy him a beer a month club.
Yeah.
Great. So, do we want to talk news, Curtis, or what would you like to do next?
Yeah, we can go through the news there. There's been some mentioned chat of some things that people want mentioned. So I'll go through the stuff that I have. Some of that stuff I already have queued up. We already covered Chet's Digger 3, so I won't revamp that again. And then afterwards, if anybody else had anything I missed, because I just kind of quickly did that this morning, so I might have missed some stories. But yeah, I can go through the brief news here. I'll screen share so you guys can see what I'm talking about. Okay, so first up, Per Surratt and his friend, and I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Kees van Os, something like that. We've been doing the Spectrum ports based on the AGD engine. Actually, in this last week, we've released 2 6-packs of games. So that's 12 new games that have been ported for the Dragon and the CoCo that you can download, and we've got some screenshots here. So this one here is the first of the pack, and it's the 6 games they have on that particular one are Code Zero, which you can see a couple of screenshots here, up to the 3rd, and then Cybermania.
Curtis, I just want to mention, most of them, if you do run them in composite, they don't really, do too much in the artifacting. I mean, it's not intentional, right? Accidental artifacting. But there was one
these
game.
Are meant to be mono. Yeah.
Right. But there is one of them that I did run, one of the first ones, which actually looks good in composite and does some, like I said, accidental artifacting and shows a little bit of color.
You remember which one that was?
It was like the second one, and it's like a space one. So my point is, just try it in composite. You might, get some, additional spots of blue and red.
Yeah, I do know the engine supports color, but the way they've written their converters, that you have to manually redo the graphics for the CoCo to support the color. So the raw import basically just does the mono.
Yeah, and Per is not going.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Per is not going to add CoCo 3 colors to this, but he did say after they're done, they will open up the code if somebody wants to go in and either create PMO 3 for the CoCo 1 and 2, and or add the CoCo 3 colors to the high res.
Yeah, well, even just making it P mode 3 for the CoCo 3 itself, you could just change the palettes, and then you can have a custom 4-color palette set for each of the P mode 3. So that would work pretty good. And I'm assuming you guys can see the screen that I'm sharing here, the Cybermania.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some of the artwork's really done well.
Yeah, some pretty impressive stuff in here.
So these games, is Pierre writing this so that works on a CoCo 1 and 2, not for a CoCo 3, is it? Not specifically for a 3?
Not specifically for 3, no. He's doing it so it's Dragon and or CoCo 1 and 2.
I wonder what the speed's like, because
you might be able to comment on that, Rob, because you played them. I haven't actually played too many.
Yeah, I played them, and the speed is very fast. I mean, there's there's no. It just seems normal to me. There's some fast movement, some creatures that bounce up and down that you have to get by, and they all move very, very quickly.
Yeah, I think if you design the game for the engine, which is what you would do, I mean, you're not going to do like a full horizontal, vertical, smooth scroll or anything like that in any of these, but for the types of games the engine was designed for, I think it's pretty optimized from what I've heard.
Yeah, from what reading his release notes on it a little bit, is it was designed to it uses more memory to help speed things up. The reason it requires 64. So instead of having to do all the masking and moving, it's kind of pre-done on things to make it run fast.
Almost like compiled sprites then type of thing.
Yeah, it's not really. It's like instead of some sprites you do and you do a mask and you move it over and you do a different set of routine masks. In this case, they've done the mask pre-shifted.
Yeah.
Oh, the sprite pre-shifted over, so takes less work to do it, so it could run faster.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So these would work pretty good on a CoCo 3 with an RGB monitor. I mean, you've got the
It'd be
extra
perfect,
speed,
yeah. It would
and
look like
the black and white, no artifacting, so it's coming up exactly as you're showing it in the screenshots there.
Yep, that's exactly true.
I must try it. I haven't had a chance to try any of this.
Yeah, and what are they up to now? They've got, I think, 40 games out now, total.
Oh, yeah.
32 or something, 32 to 40, somewhere in there.
And this is for games that were written under this, what'd you call it? AG, whatever.
AGD, yeah.
On the
Arcade
Spectrum, they had to be written in that AGD on the Spectrum to start with.
Yeah.
In other words, you can't get any Spectrum game and convert it.
No, just the ones that were written under that.
It had to be written under AGD, yeah.
Which there's 170, I guess, so they're only about a quarter of the way through, if that. And it does sound like he is planning on porting every single one of them.
Wow.
So there's 170 new games coming to the CoCo 1 and 2 this year.
Cool.
That's basically what it was down to. Yeah, I'll just scroll through some of the ones here. I don't know anything about these games. If Rob, if you have any comments on a specific game.
I have not downloaded the newest games. I mean, I cannot keep up with with Bear and his team. They are cranking them out, and I'm behind on the last update.
Yeah, well, he did one on January 8th, I think it was, and then one on January 11th, which was like yesterday. So there was 6 games in each of those 2 packs, plus the couple packs he released, previous to that in the previous week or two. So yeah, they're just cranking them at this point. So I'll just kind of read them through here. There's Double Bubble, Deep Core Raider. They seem to have a separate splash screen for each of the games too, which is kind of nice. So you get this title screen once you get playing it. Dead Flesh Boy, I don't even know what that's about, but Dark Tricks. So that was one pack, and then the pack they released like 4 days later has a Donkey Kong Jr. 2, which sounds intriguing to me. Definitely based on the Donkey Kong Jr. graphics from the couple screenshots I got here. A game called Doodlebug, which has nothing to do with the Doodlebug we had on the CoCo, which was a clone of the Ladybug arcade game. Mini Explorer 31. I don't know what happened the first 30, but there you go. And Flipe, I have no idea what that is. Looks like a platformer. I have to say the engine looks like it's basically designed for platformer style games. So
it looks like Bubble Bobble.
Yeah, it could be. It does look somewhat like it. UFO, which I'm not quite sure what that one's about. A bit more of that. And somebody else can Octo Kitty, I think it was called. Which looks original, at least from what I can tell. So yeah, I mean, keep an eye out on both the Facebook group. He's also been publishing on the CoCo listserv. Every time they do one of these releases, he tells you where to go get them. They have both a Dragon-specific download and a CoCo-specific download zip file for each. Because some keyboard controls and stuff are different, obviously, because of the keyboard matrix differences.
Curtis, are we getting this to the CoCo archive?
Has he been uploading them there? I'm not even sure.
I don't think so.
Because to get on the archive, basically, you have to, whoever's done it has to submit it to them. Like I've been submitting EOUs for him to put up for the betas and stuff here. But if Pear and Keys aren't putting them up there, then somebody else will have to upload them on their behalf.
Okay.
So anyway, keep a lookout. There's more coming. Lots more coming. And then this one here, this is a project that Henry Reitfeld has been working on. He has a Rampage arcade cabinet with the actual original arcade buttons and the red ball joystick and everything else. And he's put in a CoCo flash and a CoCo with an LCD screen. He's got, I think, 5 or 6 videos of it showing him launching various games, playing it. So I'll just show one here briefly. This is Miss Maze, the Tom Mix game. But you can kind of see on the sides beside the monitor, you can see the original graphics for the Rampage arcade game. So he's got to get Rampage itself on there so that Steve Bjork can see his CoCo version running on the real arcade hardware. But it's a pretty cool project. I definitely like those old arcade style controllers, are quite nice. And I know John's kind of, getting duplicates somewhat of some of them, like the arcade buttons and stuff. So he's kind of getting us halfway there himself. Anyway, I won't keep playing that forever.
Great.
OVCC. This is Walter Zambati. He's been working on a couple of things related to VCC. VCC basically stalled at 2.01b, and it's got some bugs and stuff in it, as many of us know. If you want accurate or completely accurate emulation, MAME is definitely a better choice. But Walter's working on this. The twofold project is, one, he's going to go through and fix the bugs. There's some palette bugs. There's some timing bugs. It only supports one hard drive image at a time, whereas MAME supports two, and most IDE controller stuff that they're emulating supported two, other things like that. But the other thing he's doing too is that the original VCC was tied to Windows. So we've been on anything else, you have to run it under Wine to get it to work, which is basically a Windows, not quite an emulator, but a kind of a Windows translation layer. So the one thing he's doing is he's moving the graphics engine and the graphics routines it's using to be something that's cross-platform. Walter himself is doing the Linux and Windows versions, which you can see on the screenshot. You can go download it. There's links to it on Discord and on the listserv and on Facebook. And he's even doing all the plugins, so you get your virtual multi-pack and some of the extra hardware that's in there. And then Michael Furman, Mikey, in Discord, he's also posted his link for the OS 10 port of it as well. So now we've got all three major platforms are supporting this. I've been running it, and it actually runs pretty good. It allows the maximum speed of the emulation to be much higher than the original VCC did, because I think that maxed out at, what, 89 megahertz or something? And his current OVCC lets you overclock to like 512 megahertz. We have a half gigahertz CoCo basically at this point. So that's kind of cool. But it's still a work in progress. It's a little bit buggy in some certain spots. There's some stuff, the 639, the original VCC, if you hit some illegal 639 instructions, it would throw up a little extra window saying, I don't know how to do a hardware divide, and then continue on. When I've been trying 639 code on OVCC, it literally crashes the emulator completely. So he's not handling those quite as well. But I know several people in the past, Lee Patterson was one, have actually worked on the older VCC code, the Windows specific code, and actually fixed some of these bugs. So hopefully they can get their code changes up to Walter. He can incorporate them in, and then we can get the VCC to become a full emulator on the level of compatibility as MAME is, but with the much easier to use user interface that VCC has, because MAME's quite frankly sucks. So anyway, keep an eye out for that, but there is versions of them to download for all three major platforms. If any of you guys want to try it out and report bugs and stuff to Walter. He directly posts in the list. I think he's posting stuff on Facebook, or is somebody else forwarding that? I can't remember. I don't think he's on Discord, but definitely a work in progress to watch.
Where do we find this link?
Well, I got the, can you see the link on the top there?
I can.
I'll post it, but I was in the CoCo mailing list, but I'll post it here. So.
Okay, and Mark, if you can, post Mikey's link to his OS 10 version. It's a direct link to his zip file, so I didn't want to throw it on the screen here because it's going to try to download it.
Gotcha.
And Mark, if you still have time after that, there's a GitHub for the AGD development tools.
AGD, okay. I'll find that first.
Keep you busy.
That's what I do anyway. So.
But yeah, OVCC is definitely a nice project, and it looks nice. It has a lot of potential, and it's actively being worked on, which VCC hasn't been for years. So it's definitely support them. Next up on Facebook, Paul Shoemaker released a new screenshot from his dungeon crawler game. And as he mentioned, he's down to creating the 25 level maps now. And he's got some details. People have been asking him questions and stuff. But it's a real nice, it's another monochrome style game, kind of like the AGD stuff. So another good one for the CM8s if you have a CoCo 3. But a nice dungeon crawl, nice graphics. Looks good.
Written in BASIC as well, isn't it?
Yeah. And then Ben Jimenez, is that how you pronounce his last name? I'm not sure.
Jimenez?
Jimenez, is that it? Okay.
Jimenez, I think.
Jimenez? Okay. He's been updating his game as well, so we got some screenshots there, and he's actually got some of the fake artifacting turned on, so you kind of see the difference. And then getting bigger style, I don't know if I could call them sprites, but tiles, I guess, for the backgrounds and stuff too. So there's a lot of game development going on with with Rick and Chet and Ben and Paul, and actually both Pauls, and there's just a ton of stuff going on. All the stuff they're doing with the AGD stuff. I mean, this is going to be the year for CoCo Games, I think. Just from the Paul or from Pear's project, I mean, there's another 130 games still coming from that, and then all the individual ones here. So if you're a CoCo game player, this is your year. And this, we kind of talked about this with Paul Thayer. I can't remember if it was on After Dark or the actual regular show, about doing a fundraiser to bring Simon down all the way from Europe for CoCoFest, which was, we've had past precedents of that. We brought Nick down to PenFest and helped fund that. Actually, we kind of joked at the time we were paying to fund to send him back home. It wasn't a one-way trip, but I did take a look at it this morning, and I guess 5 people contributed, and they're going for a $1,500 goal to help pay for the flights and stuff here, and they're already at $800 from just 5 contributors, so that's outstanding. I will be contributing later because right now I'm in my dead season, so basically any money I come into right now, I basically have to just use that for food and that type of thing. But once my rush season starts in a couple of weeks here, then I'll throw in some money for it too. But there's a GoFundMe page. The link is at the top of the right over here. So if you're on Facebook, just go find that and then click on it. Then you can contribute to bringing him down. So we could have the madman himself will actually be down at CoCoFest. And this was an interesting one. I was actually published at a website called Vintage.es, which I'm not familiar with, but it's basically a lot of the photos they took from the 1986 July rainbow, which was kind of their, well, July's their anniversary, so every July they did something special. And that particular one, they took a lot of photos of the Falsoft building and a lot of the employees, including Lonnie, his daughter, Jim Reed, and a bunch of the others here. And this website kind of republished those photos, kind of showing things as they were back in 1986. So there's stuff like pictures of the various people, their meeting room. The second one on the screen right now is actually their tape duplication for doing Rainbow on tape and Rainbow on disc, which I think Ron pointed out there's some TDPs in there as well. So it's an interesting trip down memory lane. If you have the July 1986 Rainbow, or if you go on the archive, you can probably get slightly better quality pictures of them on the scans. But that was an interesting trip down memory lane. Here we are in CoCoFest. I'll let some other people do any specific things about CoCoFest. They're a bit more knowledgeable on it than I. But they do have an official logo picked out now, and it's an official slogan, which is "Make the Trek." CoCoFest, which kind of has the Star Trek symbol in the background, and the heron statue prominently featured. I know Ron had submitted some sample artwork for that too, so maybe that could be part of the promotional materials too. It's not, there's no reason you have to limit it to just one. That might be the official one that Glenside's using, but you can definitely promote it in other ways, in other sites and other Facebook pages using Ron's or anybody else's original design. So, is anybody on the panel here right now got anything additional to add about CoCoFest in general?
Be there.
Because I know they had Glenside had an online meeting this last week, which I'm assuming they would have discussed CoCoFest, but I wasn't able to make it, so I don't know if anything new has come out.
Well, Curtis, Boise was in the chat and was specifically mentioning, what did he say? Trying to get more participation. Okay, so obviously, what does he mean by CoCo call for papers? Just
actually, that's a news item I'll be coming up on shortly here, so we will.
Gotcha.
Good. Was anybody on here on the conference call with Glenside? Mark or any of you guys? Did you make it? No.
No, I missed it.
No, sorry, I had another commitment.
Yeah, that's the same as me. I wasn't able to make it for the same reason. Okay, well, hopefully we can get some info from Tony or John or somebody later on and see if there's anything else to say, like how maybe tables are selling out or whatever. This is from David Mitchell. It's a little Star Trek game, as you can see in low res, but the thing I found fascinating about this one is that it's a 10-liner contest entry type thing. So this entire little mini Star Trek game is 10 lines of basic code. So cool. That's a nice challenge. We had the one-liners. I mean, Rainbow used to publish those, and the two-liners that they also did, and they even send you little prizes and stuff if you got yours published. But the 10-liner is an interesting challenge. It's enough that you can actually make a semi-decent game, and this is an example of it. So I thought that was cool. And this one here, this is the old Synapse ads, which included Protectors 2 as we know it, because Protectors was already out from Tom Mix, is a totally different game. And Seamus, which Tandy actually eventually picked up and sold themselves. At this point, Synapse was selling it themselves, and there was cross-platform. These games were for the Atari and Commodore, etc. Now, the question on this one was Picnic Paranoia, because this was announced in various magazines, both Rainbow, Color Computer News, that all three of these games were available for the CoCo. And the guy was asking if anybody has ever actually seen Picnic Paranoia in the CoCo. Obviously, we've seen the other two. I'm trying to remember back, because I thought I had seen it way back in the day because one person had bought it, but I might be confusing it with something that looks slightly similar, like maybe Bandito or something. So I'm not sure if I do. I don't have a copy of it. I don't have it on my website because I haven't seen a copy of it, but I was wondering if anybody in the panel has ever actually seen a CoCo version of that game, Picnic Paranoia.
Not me.
Nope.
Nope.
No, so that might have been Vaporware, one of the earlier examples.
Maybe.
Okay, well, I guess we'll have to see if it ever shows up somewhere. Like I said, I kind of dimly remember that I did see it at one time, but I'm not entirely sure I did. This is one Ron brought up. The Colorcade module. I do remember seeing this advertised in Rainbow, and one of its features was is you could have it auto-repeat your fire button, and you could control the speed with that little dial on the top, so that certain games where trying to fire as fast as you can actually work to your disadvantage. So you can only have 2 bullets on the screen. If they're both just barely apart from each other, then you leave this big gap for the aliens to sneak through. So it was kind of an interesting idea of being able to have that variable speed thing. I'd never seen one in real life before I saw this picture of it. I've never actually seen it before. I've just read about it. So, and this was mentioned on Atari Age. I was wondering if anybody in the panel, especially the old timers here, had ever seen or had this before themselves. Maybe Al or John or Ron.
No.
No, I haven't really seen that. It's a very easy thing to build one. If you want to do one, a 5-5 timer, you can use that to trigger and do it different ways, repeat. Some game systems actually had this kind of stuff built in. I think the TurboGrafx, you had certain keys you could hit. It would multiple repeat rather than the other one. So it'd do the same function of maybe a key next to it, but it would repeat for you automatically.
Is this a feature creep for yours?
I've wondered about that.
You don't have enough options on it there, John. We need one that switches between both ports, between 2 different joysticks on the same port, and now we need variable speed auto fire.
Well, back to the switching between 2 ports. Yeah, that could be done. It kind of ties you to one joystick hook in there. Of course, you could do that. It'd just be the inverse of the switch that would allow you to do 2 joysticks on one. So you just have to have the different connectors on it and go differently. Or have adapter from it. That's a possibility.
There were Atari-style joysticks that had the turbo button built in.
Yes, they definitely. I've experienced that with, different game controllers at some point. Just been too long ago to remember which is what.
There's a YouTube video from Miss Maddie from the UK, where she has several of those joysticks and fixes them, and then she builds the circuit to add to a joystick. She actually has a joystick she likes better, and she builds the circuit on a perf board and adds it to the joystick.
There'd be several ways to do that today, and all of them kind of similar in cost. The classic way to do that would be something like the classic 5-5-5 timer.
Right.
Okay.
That's what she uses.
And but you could throw a little, microcontroller chips are cheap enough. You can buy 8-pin microcontroller that you could, take one input and change speeds or do analog read. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do something like that.
I have one of these modules, not this module. It's a much smaller, professionally made module, and I don't know what. It's a plastic. It's got a plastic. It's like, I'll have to find it and take a picture of it and put it online.
Is it for the CoCo?
It's for the Atari.
No.
And I used it with my Wiko. I have a Wiko adapter that adapts Atari joysticks to the CoCo. So I used
Well,
to
you know, back in the day when these were coming out like that, most of us game designers had one attitude about it. They're cheats. They're for lazy people. If you want to fire, press the button. You know, and you know, the thing is, I've written games where you have rapid fire because that was part of the game design. You press the button, and while you held it down, it fired a bunch of shots. So putting a rapid fire into something that's not designed for it is just simply a cheat, and your high score should never be posted at that point.
Yeah.
There's ways to combat that too. You just make it so every shot costs you.
Well, and that's what Nick Marentes did something at PopStar Pilot where you can't just
button mash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you look at R-Type, that's a good example of, hey, you can do button mashing, you can fire a lot, but if you press and hold the button, it charges up the laser and you get a nice, beautiful killing shot out of that thing.
Not to go against Steve's point, but there is the other point of view that having a rapid fire means you don't wear out your fire button quite so quickly by rapidly trying to press it and possibly even breaking it. Because Atari 2600 joysticks were very fragile and they would break all the time.
Well, those are Atari 2600s. The CoCo buttons do a little better job.
Yeah, and going into the game design, I mean, Xenix is a good example of that, or Crystal City, the Jeremy Spiller games, because you can rapid fire like crazy and kill all the ships, but then you don't get to collect all your bonuses. You'd be shooting your bonuses because he made them all destructive, like your parachutes for fuel in Crystal City. If you shoot them, they're gone. You don't get fuel for it. You have to run into them. And your power-ups for getting multi-shot and more powerful shots and all that kind of stuff, same thing. If you shot those, they're done. So you had to do timing there. You had to like pick and choose your shots. You might do a burst if there's just aliens in front of you, but if you had a couple of these bonuses coming down, you'd just fire, you know, intermittently so you didn't kill the stuff you were trying to collect.
And I tend toward, you know, Steve's point of view. If the game is properly designed and your sticks are good, they have little value. Okay.
Of course, if you go back, look at Space Invaders. How many shots did you have on the screen at one time? One. You really had to plan that shot. And that's part of the game design.
Yeah.
What do you think that said? Blast speed, and you just can't see the AST?
It was button, it's BU. It's button speed.
Oh. Okay.
Just to put this in here, Richard Lorbieski at Boyson Tech makes Atari to color computer joystick adapters. A pair of them is about $29.
Yep.
He calls it the Paragon.
Yeah, and there's other adapters by various people, Neil Blanchard and others, for adapting Genesis joysticks and some of the more modern ones as well. So there's a lot of options for adding the third-party ones.
And I definitely find the Sega joysticks much more comfortable than the old Atari ones.
Yeah, the Sega Genesis gamepad is how I got to Zone 5 and PopStar Pilot.
Really?
See, I guess I'm too old school. I tried some of the newer controllers and I do crappy on PopStar. I went back to my deluxe and then I whistled right through the whole thing. So
that Sega Genesis, I can go kind of diagonally, and that's what ultimately got me through Zone 2. Because I can kind of skip ahead and then move forward diagonally and catch up when I'm starting to fall behind.
I'll have to look at that.
Hey, Nick, how's come you're not yelling cheater?
Cheetah.
Actually, Steve, along the same lines, though, I guess the question is, since the original first few years of the CoCo was basically based on free-floating Black Beauty joysticks, as we nicknamed them, some of the games were more self-centric, especially if we were cloning arcade games like Pac-Man and stuff. So when the actual deluxe joysticks came out, or some of the third-party ones that had spring back to center, did you view that as cheating too then on the original set of CoCo games that was designed when only the Black Beauties were out?
Tell you the honest truth, most people, when you're doing the games and like that, the self-centering, if it's done well, you really don't notice it that much. It just helps you recenter. So
free floating, you mean?
It's pretty much like a free floating to a limited degree. It's just that when you release it, it goes to center. I played joysticks that had really strong springs on there. I'm going, come on, guys, this is not a good joystick because you're having to do a lot of force to get it to move in a particular direction.
Yeah, because I mean, for myself personally, on games where you had tight caverns and stuff to fight through, like say Whirlybird Run or Sea Dragon or something like that, the spring back made a huge difference because you had very little time to get your joystick back to center, and if you have a free float, you might push it a little bit too far up, and you'd miss it stopping a vertical or horizontal movement.
Overshoot, basically.
Yeah. Well, I've always found that the arcade style joystick that eventually did come out for the CoCo was by far best for those particular things, even though they weren't necessarily, some of them weren't self-centering. They still, the fact that you're moving something a great distance seemed to kind of help a little bit.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be cool at one of the CoCo Fests to have a CoCo with everything you could get attached to it?
Well, I think David Ladd would sign up for that.
Yeah, you could have an external keyboard, a new keyboard. You could have
the multi-pack would cover that, I think.
Yeah,
16-port multi-pack from Jim Brain.
Well, it's not just that. You've got all the options that you can put inside the CoCo, and hang Sir Sound outside on the serial port.
Mm-hmm. A lower kit and a composite adapter from Ed Snyder.
And one of these.
No.
Modules?
No, we're talking about the beautiful VGA adapter for a CoCo 1.
Yeah. You're right, Steve. The CoCo VGA has the lower kit built in.
The serial to parallel adapter.
For what?
Printing.
Yeah, where are you going to get the ribbons for that old printer?
It's what you can attach.
Well, I have a Gemini 10X. I can buy any typewriter ribbon at Staples, and it works fine.
Hey, look, if you're going to attach something to the CoCo, it better be working. It's just.
Well, my TP10 works. It's got the latest paper that works with it. It's thermal.
Yeah, but if you're
still buy it,
you're going to have a drive wire cable, so you're not going to plug in a printer.
No. If you're using Ed's mini multi-pack or whatever it's called, you've got 2 serial ports on there.
That's right.
Yeah, or if you're using Jim's, you can plug in all these serial adapters.
See?
Yeah, you just need a patch, David Ladd's patch.
And you can log into BBSs and stuff with the serial ports now too. So through Telnet.
Now, you guys out there in the CoCo community, I do not want you to sit there and say somebody needs to come up with a USB to CoCo adapter because you're not going to get your USB printer working on a CoCo. I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way.
No,
that sounded like a challenge.
Now there is a Atari. Well, Amiga uses the same adapter as the Atari, and there is an Amiga to USB mouse adapter, and I do not know if it'll work on the CoCo if it's connected to via the Paragon adapter. But you're obviously not going to be able to do like a printer or anything like that.
No. The printers require too much power from the computer nowadays. They're just a dumb box saying out there they'll put out dots on a piece of paper. You've got to do all the work in the computer.
Yeah, all the page composition is done on the computer and then sent to the printer.
Yeah.
So
I think I just said that. Yeah.
Since somebody mentioned the Mega MPI, I am on, before we move to your next thing, Curtis, I am on Ed Snyder's page. I do see that he does have one CoCo SDC back in stock. He is still out of stock on the Mega Mini MPI.
Yeah, I think just the 3 have been released so far, kind of to the developer community.
Yeah, I sent him an email to be put on the list.
Can I ask one question about that though? Ed Snyder is offering some kind of deal where you get a CoCo PSG with your Mega Mini MPI for half price.
Yeah.
So what? And this might be for Nick because he has the PSG. Why would you want the PSG and the Mega MPI? I'm trying to figure out why he's.
Well, there's some various reasons for that. Nick, you want to go ahead and go first because I really haven't programmed the PSG yet. I've had one for quite a long time, though.
Well, they're two different sound chips, aren't they? The MPI's got
the more advanced one. Yeah.
Correct.
I guess it comes down to what software is out there that uses the sound chips. So yeah, if you want to have something that works on, I mean, you'd have games that work for the PSG, and then you got games that work with the Yamaha. The thing is, though, at the moment, there's nothing that uses either. So yeah, the big question is.
Well, Ed does have an audio player.
Well, and Chet is developing his engine, his audio drivers, or whatever you want to call it, that supports multiple sound chips, although it doesn't support the Mega Mini yet. So there might be a way to do that, Chet, right, in the future?
Yeah, because the speech and sound cartridge, the Symphony 12, and the PSG all use a variant of the AY8910. So that was actually a pretty common chip, and there's not very much difference between that and the SN chip that I've already got the emulation for in BCC. So the AY chip series is going to be my next one. So I mean, you're likely going to have more support for both of those lower end chips, because when you move up to the Mega Mini API, or the one that's in there, that's an OPL or an OPM chip. So you've got a lot more channels, you've got a lot more options, you've got sound banks that you can deal with, so you can actually upload sound samples to be played as instruments. So it actually does take a bit more effort to program for that particular chip.
And the other thing, it is more designed for music than sound effects, where the others are more sound effects oriented.
One thing about the CoCo PSG, and I have a couple of them, is they also have 512K of flash, 512K of SRAM, basically. And so you could use it as like a banked memory device, or as like a cartridge device. It banks into the last 16K, 8K banks. Also,
and joystick ports,
and it has 2 Atari joystick ports, which, since they're completely programmable, you could actually do the Sega stuff. You could do the interrogation of the Sega pad for the advanced stuff on it. So yeah, it's actually could be handy for a bunch of things. So.
Okay. And Chet, you do plan on eventually supporting the OPL3 on the Mega Mini?
Yeah, in fact, I've forked one of the trackers, which was specific for the Famicom devices, since it supports a wide set of features that I already need. I just need to add support for the other chips, and of course, the OPM chip will be less. It's a bit more complicated, so it's a bit more involved to get the emulation in there with that. And then of course, that tracker already supports exporting everything in BGM format, which is perfect for playback in things like games and just standalone files. So a lot of the support is already there. So yeah, both on the authoring and the playback front, there is activity there for all of the chips. It's just going to be a matter of time based on complexity of those particular items.
Keep me in the loop. We were supposed to meet together, so with my interest line. So keep me in the loop, Chet.
Will do.
The OPL can be programmed in a simple fashion. Once you've load up or configure a voice or a channel, you can then just send it notes. But that's, of course, not using the chip to its full capacity. The OPL is good because it is a full synthesizer chip. It is very powerful. You can do some pretty good stuff. But yeah, it does make it more complex to program.
Yeah, I agree.
But you don't have to do that, though. You can use it in its much more simpler fashion, and it's downward compatible with the OPL 1 and 2. So,
yeah, I think it'll depend on which ones seem to take the market by storm, per se, as well as, because if people write the software to use the more powerful parts of the OLP chip, then you might see some more support for it. Or if somebody writes a generic driver for it that that everybody can do fairly easily, put in hooks to basic or basic 9 or whatever, depending.
Right.
This is something I've looked at, is some hooks to basic and things. It just get enough time with all the projects.
Yeah, well, I remember, John, you and I and Alan Huffman talked about that 2 or 3 years ago, and none of us have gotten any further on that yet. So.
Which chip is Jim Brain's board going to use? That little shim board that goes between the SDC and the CoCo?
Both.
Yeah, it's designed to basically make your old MPI like the multi-mini MPI.
Of course, one thing that you know, we've really got to understand too is when it comes to, yeah, we can put these sound cards on there, you know, these sound options and everything. But if you don't really understand how to use it, how to design with it, how to create it, the music and the sound effects, they're not going to come off that well. I mean, when I was developing my games, I had a professional composer that was available to me when I was at Nova Logic and THQ and stuff like that. When I was at Datasoft, I had James. James was my composer. He would come up with the music and we'd put it in there. So, you know, it's one thing to say, okay, I'm going to do music. It's another thing to be able to do music that sounds good to your ear.
Agreed.
Now, one person that's very good with this stuff, and I really like his stuff, is Alan Hoffman. He does a great job.
Yeah, I'd add Mike Rowan to that list too. He's quite a good musician too. So we've got some resources in the CoCo community that would definitely, I think, be able to help and be willing to help for people to, you know, write music for some of these games to use these chips.
Well, if you take our CoCo Forever friend.
Okay, if you take a look at Sir Sound that Alan's put together, it's the same chip that's in the Game Master cartridge, but the stuff that Alan produces is so much better than what we've seen on that Game Master cartridge so far. It's just he understands how to put the stuff and do it well.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I'm trying to get, you know, things like the Snebbin tracker and all of that, you know, up to snuff, because with the CoCo, and that was one of the reasons why I picked Famicom is that, you know, you have the option of using the DAC as well as the sound chip. So you want to be able to make sure that you've got those options in there, but you also want to be able to make sure that you've got a much wider talent, you know, pool of talent, because when you're using something like a tracker format, you can go to some of these 8-bit you know, game groups and find some very, very talented people that can come up with some really good music for your games.
Yeah, and as Al Hartman mentioned, we can add Bruce Moore to the list too, because he's a professional musician by trade. That's his bread and butter.
So the next couple of years is going to look pretty good for game.
Yep, sound pretty good. Yeah,
cool.
When it comes to games, one thing I've always said to my development teams like that, don't plan on doing it everything yourself. You've got talent in your team, use the talent. I mean, ever since about 1982, almost every single game that I've done has been a team effort between artists, composers, and like that. I heard somebody talking about how these great arcade games like Donkey Kong and all this kind of stuff, they were done by a solo programmer. No, they weren't. They were done by a team. They had people that were artists. They had people that were hardware engineers designing electronics. They had programmers. But the person that was taking all the credit was the game designer, of course. But that game designer was not a programmer. So, yeah, it takes a team.
I think
we have the talent.
I think the first programmer that picks a sound card and supports it is going to be an important step in establishing which one becomes the standard.
I'm voting for Chet. And all of them.
Well, actually, I mean, the way that I'm working everything is that they all get supported. I mean, even within the design of the tracker and the extensions that I want to make, you could really combine the two cards. You could have a GMC and a PSG both running at the same time, or even a speech and sound cartridge, and it would take advantage of those.
That'd be cool.
So hopefully,
slot MPI is going to be a requirement.
Hey, Chet, back at your day job when you're working on those projects, how big is your team?
Right now, our team is at 5 developers. 2 artists, a handful of QA, but then that's, you know, we do share that globally. But yeah, it's typically smaller teams at our company.
Because you would hate to, on those machines, have to sit down and do all the artwork in addition to the coding.
I actually do some of the artwork.
But all of it?
No, I do a rough cut that looks really ugly, and then I hand it over to the professionals and let them make it look pretty.
Exactly.
You know, and they're really, really, really good at it. And it's, I mean, you know, Nick, I mean, I have no problem. People know where I work. I work for an Australian company called Aristocrat. Nick, you may be familiar with them.
No, I haven't heard of
Really?
them.
No. So we're a gaming company. We do digital slot games, and so we're pretty much all over the world. So you'll see that kind of quality in those games if you ever seen them before. And we've got really, really good artists.
Yeah. And for the sound, do you contract that out, or do you have an in-house composer?
Varies. It depends on the studio. We don't actually do that particular part of it. We get that afterwards.
Okay.
Gee, that makes me sound really old school.
Yeah, you are. You are old school. You're the lone programmer sitting off by yourself, coming up with everything.
Nick, you have different hats.
Well, a dunce hat.
You put your artist hat on, and then you put your music hat on.
Yeah. Like I said, you didn't even have to add school to that sentence. I'm really old. You could have stopped right there. So.
Well, when I did Rampage, I had an artist help me out with the stuff. I do the rough stuff, the general layout, and they'd go through and clean it up and like that. Kind of like the same idea of doing animation where you have the in-between artists doing the work. No one person does a particular character in a Disney movie. They have a team that works on the character.
And those were Activision people?
No, actually, they were people I hired.
Oh.
Okay, are we back to news yet? Or?
Back to news. Sorry, sorry,
enough
Curtis.
Enough of this old talk.
I probably should have stopped screen sharing because I know some of you were showing some stuff in Zoom here that I don't think anybody saw.
No, I switched it
I'm
on
not
the
seeing
screen,
your
Curtis.
screen coming through on YouTube, Curtis. I don't know if other people are.
Refresh it.
Yeah, it's not working
No.
for me, but
There isn't any screen share on mine.
Okay.
I refresh the YouTube, it fixes it.
There you are.
Well, I can reshare, I guess.
there now it's working.
It's up now.
What'd you do?
CoCoTALK. Or
This is-
Coco Fest.
Here
Excuse
it
me.
goes.
When you have the core dump, then you have the call for papers after.
Okay, so Late Night Coco, this is a blog that Boise's writing about, and he was mentioning in the chat he wanted to mention this. So he's doing his second annual call to papers, which is basically to write a semi-professional style paper on either, as he points out in the blog here, a new or novel concept or research into improving an existing practice, but about the CoCo in some way. It could be software, could be hardware, whatever. There was a couple, I think, submitted last year. One was Boise's own, and then I can't remember who did the other one off the top of my head. But he's got, kind of, you got to see them. Actually, you could get copies of them at the at the fest last year. So
The CoCo RGB, okay. He did that talking about the possibility of implementing sprites on his system.
yeah. So I mean, it's a really cool idea. I didn't complete university, so I didn't get up to the point where I was doing research papers, so I would have no idea where to start. So I probably won't enter, but I like the idea of it, of sharing ideas and sharing concepts and sharing, working code and stuff and explaining how it works and stuff. So I think it's a good idea to do. Hopefully some people have the time and the skills to do such a thing. So definitely want to encourage people that if they have those, to think of something and come up with it and submit it for the
Now remember, when you're writing this type of paper, you have to write it dry and then keep wringing all the water out of it.
What do you get then?
Yeah, I mean, that's the way all of the
Technical documents.
all the papers I ever get from the professional organizations I'm part of, and the consumer electronics and stuff like that, I'm going, did this guy have any imagination whatsoever? This is the most boring paper you could imagine on the topic.
Like I said, I'll leave that to the professionals. So,
But that seems to be the case when engineers write papers.
and then the last story I've got for today, and this is Nick had suggested this too, because this actually got released last week. We didn't show it on the show. If you guys remember, our friend Ben Drakes actually did the Phantom Slayer demo using the virtual reality gear that his company has made, and he actually got it to work with Gatecrasher. So I'll play a little bit of that video here. Nick, did you have any details? I think you might have talked to him about it. Anything you wanted to add, or?
Well, I'd mentioned to him that I had Gatecrasher, and he contacted me saying if where to get a copy of the game. So I pointed him to my website, and he downloaded it. And next thing you know, he sends me this an email pointing me to this video. He says, "Hey, what do you think?" It makes me want to go back and fine-tune Gatecrasher now that I know a bit more about how to, program these sort of things than what I did back then, and improve on it. But I don't think there's going to be too many people who can afford that VR unit on their CoCo anyway.
Well,
so.
not for personal, but he mentioned that they're doing it at kiosk malls and arcades and stuff in the States and Europe, and I think even Australia. I think he mentioned at one point. So if he can arrange for, those people that are demoing the system to throw in a couple of CoCo games to try out, you might be able to play it without having to spend thousands on the whole VR hardware.
Yeah.
He did mention that this game was a little bit difficult because this type of game in the modern times is more used to head tracking type stuff, which you have obviously. So he said that took about a while to get used to. But we now have two virtual reality CoCo games, Phantom Slayer and Gatecrasher. So I think that's kind of cool.
Are you sharing the sound? I don't think you are.
No, it's a lot of like loud shooting, so I didn't want to go on top of our.
Yeah, no, that's all right.
Anyway, that's it for news from me. So I will stop the sharing.
Oh well. They're doing pretty good. It's 2.5 hours so far.
I wanted to mention something. I made a faux program that is a pretend virus program. But anyway, what I did was I typed it up and then I saved it off on a floppy. And then I do what I always do with when I have to copy floppies back to my SDC. I did that as a DSK, and then I go and look at it on the SDC, and the DSK file is empty. And but the program's there. If I hit break, I can run it, and it runs, but it can't see it. So I went over to Ed Snyder and told him about it, and he goes, "Huh." So if some of you can write a little quick basic program and save it to disk, and then see if you can load it back on the SDC and see if you get a directory. I took the disk file and put it in back. I took an SD card, put it on my Windows machine, put the file in that WinImage program and changed the DOS format to VHV, whatever it is. And thought maybe that would fix it. So then I put it back on the card, put it back in the SDC, did a directory. It showed it, but every time I run a basic program, then it would crash the computer. So I was wondering what that could possibly be. Any ideas, anybody?
Crickets.
Yeah, I haven't tried that. I've actually I've been copying some basic programs and stuff to my SDC as part of my archiving project, but I don't have the latest SDC firmware in there. I just kind of threw it on just to get it started, so I haven't done all the latest updates, so I don't know if something broke, because it is working on there. I've copied basic programs back and forth on new disk images, modified a few of them too, and they seem to work fine. But I'm not running the most up-to-date SDC firmware or the Explorer for update 2, so.
Okay, well, if anybody runs into it, you might want to post it on the CoCo group on Facebook. It'd be cool.
Yeah. Should also mention you've added a bunch of digitized high color pictures too. On your group, you've got some screenshots from TV shows and pictures of your cat, I believe, at one point.
Yeah, I took a picture of my cat back in must have been the late 80s. And I used one of those Kodak cameras that unfolds, has bellows, real old. It had roll film. You had to load it in the dark. And then you take a picture, I think it was 12 pictures. And I also bought a kit and developed the film myself. I had a cheap little projector thing that would, project it onto the paper, and I developed it myself. So I was real proud of it back in the day. And I just ran across the pictures recently, and I thought, oh, I'll throw this on my CoCo, see how it looks. And it came out pretty decent. It was fun to look at. And I think I really enjoy taking pictures and putting them on the CoCo and having something relevant, because for years, the only kind of pictures or anything we got on the CoCo was out of the magazine or in a disc that would come by, or but nothing relevant or with it or happening today, And so being able to take pictures of my family and put them on the CoCo, or play around with advertising stuff, or I even put a picture of the digit, what do you call it, the GT116? What do you call it? What do you call that thing? The digitizer pad, X-Pad. I put that, as just something to have. Maybe down the road, if I learn how to program or something, I can play a bunch of these pictures together, or do something, since we have memory now. Somebody suggested maybe making a game with those screenshots or something, but I think it's...
Yeah, you could make an adventure game or something like that.
Yeah, but, it does take a while to load each page.
Well, if you run them under Nitrous 9 as an example, because it emulates a hard drive, which is a lot faster, you can load an entire 320 by 200 by 16 color screen in a second.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Cool.
Because there were some games written back in the day that were hard drive based that actually did do that.
Oh. Okay. Well, and I'm thinking also sometime in the future, maybe I'll throw a package together of, a zip file or something of just standard pictures, like Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, Happy Mother's Day, Valentine's Day, stuff like that. Would be that you can, fool with or play with, whatever.
Yeah.
Change.
Actually, you just reminded me of something. I mentioned at the beginning of the show that I just started doing my archiving of all my 700 plus floppies that are kicking around here. And one disc I found of stuff I did in 1987, I think it was. It was not long after I got the CoCo 3, because it came out a little late in Canada. But I had a couple of holiday themed stuff. I had a Valentine's Day, I had a Halloween, and I think a Christmas stuff that I uploaded CompuServe back in the day. So I'll have to throw those together, especially with Valentine's Day coming up, and upload it so people can fiddle with it. They're just very simple, basic programs, but I thought they'd be kind of cute because they were written just after I got the CoCo 3, was just learning what you could do with it. So one part of the news I did forget earlier too is the CoCo crew has been busy making quote unquote video versions. They're not like animated heads or anything like that, but they basically put a screenshot of the show notes while it's playing, and then an animated waveform of the actual voice as it's being spoken by John and Mike and Neil, etc. So they've been going through the back catalog, working from most recent to oldest, and I think they're down to episode 18 the last time I checked. So they've got over half of them now in that format, and it's kind of handy because it kind of has the show notes without having to go to a separate web page. It's built into the screen, so if you want to skip ahead to a certain part, you can just take a look. Okay, that's 2 hours and 10 minutes into the show, and just click and slide it over. So I just wanted to mention that they've been busy doing that. I know personally I would prefer if they put some additional screenshots of some of the stuff they're talking about stuff, but that's a lot more effort. This is actually automated, so they can do it fairly easy, which is why they've gotten 20 plus episodes done already. But I forgot to mention that earlier, so I'll mention that now. And that, I think, is it for news, unless anybody else has anything they wanted to add that I missed from Facebook or the list or Discord or whatever. Anyone?
Crickets.
No. I did want to mention, I asked Mark if he wanted to, Mark Overholzer, but there's a board for the Apple II called the Mill, and it puts OS 9 and a 6809 in the Apple II. And I read a post that someone has been porting over CoCo OS 9 programs to the board, and they run.
It's only for level 1 OS 9.
Currently, yeah. But you never know what someone might do in the future.
Yeah, I mean, Basic 09 would work easily on that because it doesn't, as long as you're not using the graphics functions, I mean, everything else would work fine.
Yeah, they're running Basic 09 programs on it, yep. So I think that's interesting, you know. And then there was that Libra 09 on the Atari 800. That
Yeah, the one Boise worked on.
Yep. So it's nice that OS 9 is showing up all over the place. And who knows, maybe someone will put a 6309 on that mill. And I don't know how
you
you
definitely speed it up if they did that, yeah.
I don't know how you'd get additional RAM on there to be able to run OS 9 level 2, but
yeah, you'd have to add an MMU and everything else. So I don't know if that would be that easy. They'd have to redesign the board, I would think.
Well, the board, I don't think the board's got RAM on it. I think it uses the Apple RAM.
Yeah, it does.
Okay, yeah, then you're pretty well stuck with level.
But my Apple II GS has a 2 meg RAM board in it.
Yeah, the GS that has a 651602 or whatever that was called.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Has a 8/8-bit version of the 6502.
You'd probably need to write new drivers under the OS 9 for that, for the mill board, to know how to talk to the extra RAM on the GS.
Right. Like I said, you never know what will happen someday. Someone might get an idea to do it. By the way, I want to point out to Steve Bjork that just over Ron Delvaux's left shoulder is an MC-10.
It's in the wrong place. It should be in front of the door holding it open.
Or the window.
There's a traitor in our midst.
And it's got a RAM pack.
He's trying to lighten it up.
This is what goes through Steve Bjork's head when he sees an MC-10.
Well, I will say one thing. It did keep us from getting the Deluxe. The fact that we didn't get Deluxe, which was a better computer, I'll tell you one thing. It sure holds a monitor better than the CoCo 2 or 3. The Deluxe would delay the CoCo 3 if it ever happened.
Yeah, I would have rather have had the Deluxe myself. And a Timex 1000 is much better as a doorstop.
No. I between the Deluxe and the CoCo 3, I'm glad we got the CoCo 3. It was
all right. Well, you would know what the Deluxe was like.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree too. I mean, I've seen the specs on the Deluxe, and I've actually seen the drivers that Micro had written for OS 9 on there. And yeah, the CoCo 3 had a lot more advanced features for the most part.
What year was the Deluxe supposedly supposed to come out? 84?
85 or 84?
5. See, 85 is a bit too late even for the Deluxe. If it come out in 83...
It was being designed back in 82.
Yes, if it came out, if it was to come out in 83, I would say good.
Yeah.
But by 85, yeah, if it came out in 85, it would have been old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was 84 is what I saw, the dates of the we did. So.
Well, we can all just go back to the catalog and look at the picture that was left over still in that Radio Shack catalog that came out in summer. And you can, that's the issue that they were going to have the Deluxe computer for.
Yeah. And plus the CoCo 2 manuals had it in there too.
And,
so.
Yeah. It just,
yeah,
the Deluxe offered a little bit, but then what happened is Tandy started hearing about these programmable, these chips they could design themselves to do all this logic, and they hired a company to do the gimme. And at the same time, they were developing another chip for the Tandy 1000, and that was the way to go, was these custom chips. A year before that, it was too expensive to do custom chips, and then it got cheaper. And you got to remember, too, the Color Computer 3 actually cost less than the Color Computer 2 to produce.
Yeah, and the Deluxe wouldn't have, because the Deluxe had an extra sound chip and an RS-32 pack built in. And
that's what I really liked about the Deluxe. It had that sound chip. It was the same one that was in a lot of the arcade games and the Vectrex. And, of course, a lot of the other systems.
The thing is, you look at
CoCo Deluxe. I have a keyboard from the CoCo Deluxe.
Yeah. There was 5,000 of those sold through the Radio Shack stores.
I should have bought more. I wish I had bought more.
If you looked at what the competition was producing computer-wise in 84, 85, the Deluxe would not have been able to compete. I mean, they had computers producing more colors, and they already had sound chips, years before that. So the Deluxe was basically Tandy catching up with what it should have released 2 years ago.
How much
So
memory was in it?
64.
Really?
Yeah, and the computers were starting to come out with 128 around that time.
Yeah, I think it was more 83, 84s, I think, with the original deluxe.
Of course, one thing it could do is use that 32K you couldn't access in BASIC for a RAM drive.
Yeah, and had extensions to BASIC too. It accepted lowercase commands and.
Yeah, but you know, back in those days when I was working with all these different companies, we would get people sending in their computers for us to develop products for, and I'll tell you, a lot of that stuff was just simply crap. I mean, it's the stuff that was coming in from Japan and stuff like that. So the deluxe looked pretty good compared to 95% of the crap that was out there. And, you know, the other computers that were crap. And then by the time the CoCo 3 came in, true, the Amiga was more powerful, but we didn't know at the time that the CoCo was being developed. You know, it was definitely long before the final specs of the Amiga came out. But, you know, the thing is, compared to a lot of the systems out there, the CoCo 3 was very powerful. You know, the IBM PCs, they had slow access to the video card. The video game systems, you could only access the video cards during the V blank, which means that you could only transfer 5,000 or 6,000 bytes of data to the video. I mean, there was so many restrictions, so many problems. And the CoCo was like, you want to send information to the video memory? Go ahead, do it whenever you want. I mean, I wasn't restricted. So, yeah, the CoCo looked pretty good compared to 95% of the systems out there. That's the reason why I was definitely a champion of it, is because I've seen so much crap.
Well, I remember at the time thinking the CoCo 3 was a pretty decent competitor to the Amiga because some of the games were really nice on the CoCo 3.
And let's not forget the fact that originally for the Macintosh, they were going to use the 6809, but then they jumped ship and went to the 68,000. And tell you the honest truth, the way the 68,000 was at the time, it wasn't that much faster than the 6809.
Yeah, if you did it clock for clock, it wasn't.
Yeah, so, you know, as far as getting work done, the 6009 was pretty decent chip.
The 68K just could access more memory at once.
Right.
Yeah. It had a bunch of extra registers too, which also helped. But
it
started at a faster clock rate. I mean, the low-end ones were...
So if they would have made the deluxe, would the CoCo 3 have been made with an upgrade of that case, you know?
If it had been made at all, the deluxe might have replaced the CoCo 3. Steve's trying to get at it.
Yeah, exactly. We may never gotten the CoCo 3. By that time, the guys that were in charge of the Tandy 1000 division would have crushed the CoCo. I mean, the guys doing the CoCo, they were trying to hang in there, but they had, you know, the Tandy 1000, everything, you know, it's all about square footage. And the amount of space that would take for a given number of CoCo 3s compared to a given number of Tandy 1000s, the Tandy 1000s stuck in the warehouse would make more money for Tandy, would make more money for Radio Shack. And then you've got the square footage for the pegs on the wall for the software. Yeah, you could have a game up there and that's sold on the CoCo for $30, but you could have the same game up there selling for 50 or 60 on the Tandy 1000, not to mention the fact that you could have $300 word processors. So that's the stuff that Tandy was competing against. Their CoCo division was competing against. It was just, it was a nightmare for the guys trying to keep the CoCo alive.
The only reason I asked that was because you said that the development of the deluxe was 82, 83.
The design would have been 82, 83. I think the actual release would have been.
When was the design of the CoCo 3? Right after that?
I would say it's probably would have started about a year later.
So were these the same guys that did the deluxe?
No, I don't know if they're the same guys. You can't get into that. Doesn't matter. You have, it's the same management company that's involved. That's the CoCo division. And there's only, you know, the CoCo division wasn't more than a handful of people. Tandy 1000, definitely a lot more than a handful of people. They had to go out and find software, and basically it was this division that didn't exist, and CoCo was doing fine because you only had the model, the TRSA model 1, 3, 4 division that they had to compete against, and then the Tandy 1000, and that just exploded.
Yeah, well, it was the best-selling PC clone at the time.
Well, also everybody wanted, hey, I want that IBM, you know, because I won't get fired if I buy the IBM.
The 8-bit guy made a good video on the Tandy 1000 titled "The Best MS-DOS Computer You Can Buy in 1984."
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah, well, my favorite was the TL. I liked the TL or the TL2 out of all of them when I was working at Radio Shack. As they were coming out, I thought the TL2 was a nice system.
But, you know, that's the thing is, yeah, I did have an interesting viewpoint since I was so close to Tandy and stuff like that. But, you know, I could see the fights between Tandy and Radio Shack and the different divisions. And it was brutal at times. And when the CoCo 3 division finally went bye-bye, I wasn't surprised at all. Nope. On that downy note.
Oh, well.
All right. Are we ready to...
Yep. I think we've done as much damage as we can.
Actually, I'll screen share one little thing where, since we're talking about the Deluxe, and this is a copy of the disc label from the backups of the OS9 system for the Deluxe, which I got from Boise years and years ago and kind of forgot I had. So I'll just quickly screen share that.
Where'd it go? There it goes. Okay.
So that was in February 10th of 1985 was the backup of the drivers they did for the Deluxe. So obviously it would have been, you know, finishing up probably more in late 84. So I'm guessing that's when OS9 would have been released for it.
Of course, it would be better if this label actually said Deluxe on there somewhere.
Yeah.
We'll have to take your word for it.
Yeah.
Well, it came. There's a bundle of stuff that Boise sent me all in the Deluxe, and this was the copies of the labels of the backup system for that.
Isn't there a website that's got an archive of all the Radio Shack catalogs? Somebody should be able to scan through that and find what year they had the Deluxe, because it's a, you know, it's like they have a picture of some product or something, and then it's connected to a Deluxe color computer, which is a great, you know, it looks like a gray Model 1, but it's got the little function keys on it. So if somebody wants to look through the archive and find that, that's going to be in there in the color computer section.
Yeah, because it looks like a CoCo 3 keyboard layout-wise. The only difference, I think, was the color of the background plastic.
So it matched better with the gray of the cabinet.
Yeah.
But one thing about it and the Deluxe, I'll say time and time again, it was great for putting the monitor on. That funky monitor stand that wobbled. And I didn't like the wobble because every time we would get a mild earthquake in Southern California, my monitor would just shake like crazy.
Well, have we beat this one to death?
Oh, it's dead. I can pull out some of my haunt stuff to really make it look dead, but it's dead.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. I'm out of my stories, so.
The dumpster fire is sputtering out.
Well, I think we learned a few things today. There are people that said that CoCoTALK could not get any worse. And I think we've answered that question today.
Yeah, we've proven them wrong, so we're
we're
Yay, we set a new low.
It's just got a different flavor. It's not worse. It's just different flavor.
Oh, I believe that somebody's calling in who's watching the show. Sir, did you watch today's CoCoTALk? What?
Oh,
sir,
boy.
Are you saying you didn't like today's episode? Is that what you're trying to say? All right.
I think that's enough of that. So much for having lunch after this.
The reason we don't have women on this show.
Yeah.
Don't keep playing that, or it'll get like Goonies when Chuck talks about his theater story.
Yes. Well, I would like to thank our engineer, Mr. Tom C. Thank you, Tom, for
You did a great job, Tom. You guys
doing a
are
great
welcome.
job today.
And I thank you for making the job easy for me.
All right. Our segment producers, Mr. Steve Bjork and Mr. Nick Marentes, thank you. Producer Mark D. Overholzer and Ron Timberman Delvaux.
Yep. Thank you.
And our host, L. Curtis Boyle. I'm your announcer, Rob Inman, and we thank the rest of the panel as well. Mark B., Al Hartman from Joyzy. In the live chat, we had Ken Reichert. We had Boise. We had Nick Marotta. Tim Franklin, James Jones, Nick Marotta. Did I say Nick Marotta?
Once.
Did I say Nick Marotta?
Just once.
And Eric Canales, and thanks to the folks who were on earlier, Rick Adams,
John Strong,
Coco Man, Jason Reichert, and John Strong, and anyone else I forgot to mention, Curtis?
In the chat was the original gamer, Stevie Stroh.
Yeah, he even briefly showed up on the call, very briefly, early on.
Oh, I didn't know if that was really Stevie or if that was Tim C. playing Stevie.
No, there was actually live footage of Stevie in the basketball court or whatever it was. So,
all right. Well, I apologize to Stevie, and I apologize to everybody else who watched today. Anything else before we hit the button?
How many floaters did we have?
We'll have to ask Grant that question.
Yeah. Does he know?
I don't know what that quite means. You
Well,
mean people who
Sometimes
come
we
in and
have 30 people watching.
we have
We're at 25 right now. It's
okay.
25
around 20.
souls.
Yeah, it was been 15, 20 usually, but
Okay.
we
And
apologize
thank you,
to all of you.
Thank you, everybody, for not wearing pants in the effort to increase ratings today. However, it didn't work.
Lesson learned.
Lesson learned. And I think that's all we have today, folks.
Are we going to do the outro?
Yes, we are.
Oh, we have the outro. Okay.
Yes, that I do
all
have.
of this because I didn't think we had the outro.
Yeah.
Tom C has the outro.
Take it away, Tom.
See you.
Do the outro.
Semi-pro here.
This concludes another episode of CoCoTALK, the world's leading live talk show featuring the Tandy Color Computer. For all things CoCoTALK, visit us on the web at CoCoTALK.live. We'd love to hear from you. Send feedback, suggestions, even segments via email to CoCoTALK@CoCoTALK.live. Consider supporting the show with a purchase of merchandise from our retro swag shop at 8bit256.com. If you'd like to become a patron of the show, click on the Patreon link on our site at CoCoTALK.live. CoCoTALK would not exist without the community and its cast and crew. Thanks go to Curtis Boyle, David Ladd, Mark Overholzer, Grant Leighty, Bruce Moore, Nick Marentes, Ron Delvaux, Rick Adams, Jason Reichert, Richard Lorbieski, Jim Brain, Karen Anscombe, Simon Jonason, and many, many more. Special thanks to Steve Bjork for production suggestions and to Brian Joyce, Ken Reichert, and Rob Inman for all of their bonus content and contributions, as well as Roger Taylor for getting us on the CoCo TV channel on Roku. Please help support the CoCo community by visiting some of its contributors. The CoCo Crew podcast at cococrew.org. Glenside Color Computer Club, host of CoCo Fest at glensidecc.com. Jim Brain and Retro Innovations at go4retro.com. Tandy Assembly at tandyassembly.com. Boyson Technologies at boysontech.com. Get your own switcheroo and wallaby cable at cocoman.biz. Cloud9 Technologies at cloud9tech.com. CoCoTALK is hosted by Steve Strobridge. Co-hosts, technical directors, segment hosts, and producers Curtis Boyle, David Ladd, Grant Leighty, Mark Overhofer, Ron Delvaux, and Jason Reichert. The CoCoTALK theme song is copyright 2008 by D. Bruce Moore and Greg Sheeler. Mixed, mastered, and produced by D. Bruce Moore.
Anyone else?
All right, we're back in.
If anyone else is interested, the website is RadioShackCatalogs.com.
That's where I'm looking now, yeah.
Ooh, we got a thumbs up from the original gamer Stevie Stroh. Said, good show, guys.
All right, we want to just play this one last thing, give it a try?
Yeah.
Yeah, give it a try and see if it works.
Make sure your computer
audio is shared. Yeah.
Where do you do that from? No.
Actually, probably with the way it mode you're in, it probably works. So.
Yeah, when you click share,
if it ever loads,
you have that window ready. There should be a checkbox for share computer sound.
If it wants to load here.
G'day, mates. This is Nick Marionettes, and I'm here today to tell you about the most fabulous video display product, the switcheroo. Go from RGB to composite with just the flip of a switch. Talk about ease of use. However, unlike my favorite operating system OS 9, I cannot seem to get this to work down here in Australia. CoCo3ScottCable.com.
And there you have it.
It's your inner voice, Nick.
Well, it's not in the 83 catalog, so I'm moving on to 84.
Are we going to hang around to see if we can find it, or are we finish the show?
Oh, no. End the show. That's all right.
Would that be the regular catalog or the computer catalog? There are two.
Regular.
Regular is what he said, yeah.
Okay. Put this show out of its misery.
All right. Wave bye-bye.
Goodbye,
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.